The cabin door exploded inward under the force of Damon Blackthorn's shoulder, splinters of rotted wood scattering across the floor like shrapnel. Dawn light flooded the darkness, and the Alpha King froze mid-step, his heart stopping in his chest. Sarah. She lay crumpled in the corner, her skin translucent as parchment, dark hair matted with sweat and dirt. But it wasn't his missing Luna that held him paralyzed. It was the 10 tiny bodies pressed against her, whimpering bundles of fur that couldn't be more than 8 weeks old. Wolf pups. Their coats were matted with blood that clearly wasn't their own. My God, breathed his beta, Marcus, from behind him. Damon's wolf, dormant for 5 years, silent since the day Sarah vanished, suddenly roared to life inside his chest. The mate bond, that golden thread he'd thought severed forever, pulsed weakly between them. He took a step forward, his hands shaking. Don't. Marcus grabbed his arm. Your Majesty, her scent. Damon smelled it then. Underneath Sarah's familiar honeysuckle fragrance was something acrid and wrong, something that made his wolf recoil in instinctive fear. Silver. The scent of silver poisoning hung thick in the air. His gaze traveled across the cabin floor. 3 massive bodies lay scattered among overturned furniture, rogue wolves, their throats torn out. Blood pooled beneath them, already congealing in the cold morning air. Sarah's hands were raw and bleeding, her nails torn down to the quick. Her clothes hung in shreds from her thin frame. She'd fought them. Alone. With her bare hands. Get Dr. Winters in here, Damon barked, finally finding his voice. Now. The pack doctor pushed through the crowded doorway, her medical bag already in hand. She knelt beside Sarah, her fingers finding a pulse point at her neck. The second stretched into eternity. Alpha King, Dr. Winters said quietly, not looking up. She's an acute silver toxicity. Multiple exposure points, looks like it's been building in her system for weeks, maybe months. Her organs are shutting down. Fix it. Damon's voice came out as a growl. I can't. Dr. Winters finally met his eyes, her own filled with professional sorrow. Silver poisoning at this stage, there's no antidote. She has hours at best. I'm sorry. The world tilted sideways. Damon had spent 5 years searching for her, 5 years wondering if she was alive or dead, 5 years hating her for abandoning their pack without a word. And now, after finally finding her, he was going to lose her all over again. One of the pups whimpered, nuzzling closer to Sarah's still form. They were from different litters, he could tell by their varying sizes and colorings. Orphans. All of them. The pups need immediate attention, Dr. Winters continued, her voice taking on a clinical edge. They're malnourished and dehydrated. We need to get them back to the pack. No. The word came out as barely a whisper, but it silenced everyone in the cabin. Sarah's eyes had opened, those green eyes that had haunted Damon's dreams for 5 long years. They fixed on him with an intensity that stole his breath. Sarah. He dropped to his knees beside her, ignoring Marcus's warning hand on his shoulder. Up close, she looked even worse. Her cheekbones jutted sharply beneath skin that seemed almost translucent, and dark circles shadowed her eyes. Don't try to talk. We're going to get you help. Protect them. Her voice was ragged, each word clearly causing her pain. Her trembling hand reached out, not to him, but to the nearest pup, a small gray one with white-tipped ears. They're the last survivors. Survivors? Marcus stepped forward. Of what? Sarah's gaze shifted to him, then back to Damon. In her eyes, he saw something he'd never seen before, accusation. Hatred. His wolf whined in confusion. Of the massacre, she whispered. What massacre? Damon demanded. Sarah, what are you talking about? Her breathing was growing shallower, her words coming slower. Silver Creek. Moonstone. Riverside. Each pack name fell like a stone into dark water. You ordered their extermination. Women. Children. Everyone. The accusation hit Damon like a physical blow. I did no such thing. Sarah, I've never. These pups. She coughed, and blood flecked her lips. Dr. Winters moved to intervene, but Sarah waved her away with surprising strength. Their parents begged for mercy. Called your name as they died. I heard them through the bond, dozens of voices, crying out to their alpha king for salvation that never came. That's impossible. But even as Damon said it, ice formed in his stomach. 3 months ago, he'd authorized strikes against rogue wolf populations that had been attacking human settlements. Clean operations, his military advisors had assured him. Surgical removal of dangerous elements. Not massacres. Never massacres. The blood is on your hands, Sarah continued, her voice fading. I spent 5 years running, trying to save whoever I could. But they kept coming, your soldiers, with their silver bullets and their orders. I gathered the orphans. Hid them. Moved them from safe house to safe house. Her hand tightened on the gray pup's fur. This was supposed to be the last stop. One more day, and we would have crossed the border into neutral territory. Sarah, listen to me. Damon reached for her face, cupping her cold cheek in his palm. The mate bond surged between them, weak but undeniable. I swear on my life, I never ordered any massacre. If my soldiers did this, they acted without my knowledge, without my consent. I would never. Liar. The word came out as a hiss. You rejected me 5 years ago when I questioned your methods. Called me weak. Said I didn't have the stomach for what needed to be done to keep the pack safe. Damon's mind reeled back to that night 5 years ago. They'd argued, a fierce, terrible fight about his increasingly aggressive policies toward rogue wolves. She'd wanted mercy, negotiation, peaceful solutions. He'd been fresh off losing 2 pack members to a rogue attack, his judgment clouded by grief and rage. He'd said things. Cruel things. But he'd never rejected her, never severed the mate bond. Had he? You left, he said hoarsely. You disappeared without a trace. I searched for you, Sarah. I never stopped searching. Because you wanted to finish the job. Another cough racked her body. More blood. Make sure I couldn't tell anyone what your soldiers were really doing in the borderlands. That's not true. Sarah, please. Alpha King. Dr. Winters's voice was urgent. Her pulse is weakening. If you want any chance of saying goodbye, it needs to be now. The pups had begun to whimper more insistently, pressing closer to Sarah as if they could sense her slipping away. The gray one with white-tipped ears climbed onto her chest, its tiny face buried in her neck. Sarah's hand came up to stroke its fur, the gesture achingly tender. Promise me, she whispered, her eyes locking onto Damon's. Promise me you'll protect them. All of them. No matter what the council says, no matter what your advisors recommend. They've already lost everything. Don't let them lose their lives too. I promise. The words came without thought, pulled from somewhere deep in his soul. I swear on the mate bond, on the crown, on everything I am, I will protect these pups with my life. Even though you think their parents were rogues? Criminals? Bitterness dripped from her words. Even though saving them might expose what your reign has really been built on? I don't know what's happened, Damon said, his voice breaking. I don't know what orders were given in my name, or what my soldiers have done in the borderlands. But I swear to you, Sarah, I will find out. And if what you're saying is true, if there were massacres, if innocent wolves died. He had to stop, had to swallow past the lump in his throat. Then I will spend the rest of my life making it right. Sarah studied his face for a long moment. Whatever she saw there must have satisfied her, because some of the tension left her body. The gray one, she murmured. She's the youngest. Only 5 weeks. Her name is Luna. Her mother died giving birth during a rogue attack. Your soldiers found the den before I could move them. Luna, Damon repeated, looking at the tiny pup still pressed against Sarah's chest. The brown one with black paws. That's Marcus, different Marcus. He watched his whole family burn. The twins, Ash and Ember, their father threw them into a river to save them from the silver bullets. They would have drowned if I hadn't. Her voice trailed off, her eyes starting to glaze. Sarah. Damon gripped her hand, feeling how cold her fingers had become. Stay with me. Please. I just found you. I can't lose you again. You lost me 5 years ago. But her fingers tightened around his, just slightly. When you chose power over compassion. When you let them convince you that strength meant brutality. Then let me find you again. Desperation clawed at his chest. Fight, Sarah. Fight the poison. You're the strongest wolf I've ever known. If you could survive 5 years alone, protecting these pups, then you can survive this. For a moment, something flickered in her eyes, hope, maybe, or longing. The mate bond pulsed stronger, as if responding to his plea. Then her body convulsed, her back arching off the floor. Dr. Winters lunged forward, her hands moving in practiced motions, but Damon could see the futility in her movements. Alpha King, her heart is failing. The silver has reached the muscle tissue. There's nothing I can. Do something. Damon roared, his alpha command filling the cabin with power. The windows rattled in their frames. That's an order. But some things were beyond even an Alpha King's command. Sarah's convulsions slowed, then stopped. Her breathing became shallow, irregular. The pups had begun to howl, a mournful sound that raised every hair on Damon's body. Tell me who did this, he demanded, leaning close to her ear. Sarah, if my soldiers are responsible, if someone in my command structure has been operating without my knowledge, I need names. I need evidence. Help me stop this. Her lips moved, forming words he had to strain to hear. Colonel Reeves. General Thorne. They have files. Proof of the orders. Her eyes found his one last time, and in them, he saw not hatred, but soul-deep weariness. Don't trust your counsel. Half of them know. They've been profiting from it, selling the territory, splitting the resources. Your father would be ashamed of what his legacy has become. The words hit like silver bullets to his chest. His father, the previous Alpha King, had built their pack on principles of honor and protection. If what Sarah said was true. I'll fix this, he vowed. I'll burn down everything that's rotten in my kingdom, even if I have to start with my own inner circle. I swear it, Sarah. On my father's memory, on the crown, on us, I'll make this right. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. Maybe you're not as lost as I thought. Then her eyes closed, and the already weak pulse of the mate bond guttered like a candle in a storm. No. Damon pulled her against his chest, his wolf howling in anguish. Sarah, don't you dare. Her hand, still tangled with his, gave one final squeeze. And then nothing. Dr. Winters pressed her fingers to Sarah's neck, checking for a pulse that Damon already knew was gone. After a moment, she looked up, her expression grave. I'm sorry, Alpha King. She's. A sound cut through her words, a sound that froze everyone in the cabin. Sarah's body began to glow with a soft, silver-white light. What the? Marcus stumbled backward, his hand going to the weapon at his belt. The light grew brighter, emanating from Sarah's chest where the 10 pups still huddled. It pulsed in rhythm with something, not a heartbeat, but something older, something primal. The mate bond, which had gone silent with Sarah's death, suddenly blazed to life with intensity that drove Damon to his knees. But it wasn't just the mate bond anymore. It was something else, something that felt like pack bonds multiplied by 1,000, as if every wolf Sarah had saved, every orphan she'd protected, every dying victim whose hand she'd held was reaching through the veil between life and death. Impossible, Dr. Winters breathed, her eyes wide. She's manifesting. After death. That's not possible. The light concentrated, swirling around Sarah's body like a protective cocoon. The pup's howls changed pitch, becoming something else. Not mourning, but calling. Summoning. And then, as suddenly as it began, the light winked out. Sarah's body lay still in Damon's arms. But her chest was moving. Shallow breaths, barely perceptible, but there. Dr. Winters lunged forward, her stethoscope already out. She listened for a long moment, her face a mask of professional disbelief. She has a heartbeat. Faint, but steady. The silver poisoning. She pulled out a small device, pricking Sarah's finger for a blood sample. It's gone. Completely purged from her system. Her organs are regenerating. This is a miracle, Marcus finished, his voice hushed with awe. Damon stared down at Sarah's face, watching color slowly return to her cheeks. The mate bond hummed between them, stronger now than it had ever been, even in the early days of their relationship. Get her back to the palace, he commanded, his voice rough with emotion. And the pups, all of them. They stay together. No one separates them from her, understood? Yes, Alpha King. Marcus moved to organize the transport, but his eyes kept darting back to Sarah, wonder written across his face. As they carefully lifted her onto a stretcher, one of the pups, little Luna, the gray one with white-tipped ears, crawled onto Sarah's chest and refused to be moved. Dr. Winters tried to gently relocate her, but the pup's tiny growls made her stop. Let her stay, Damon said quietly. They've been through enough. As the stretcher was carried out into the dawn light, Damon remained in the cabin for a moment longer, staring at the 3 dead rogues scattered across the floor. His soldiers. His orders. His responsibility. Colonel Reeves. General Thorne. He committed the names to memory. But more than that, he committed the sight before him to memory. The blood, the destruction, the evidence of his Luna fighting alone through the night to protect children who should never have needed protecting in the first place. He'd spent 5 years believing Sarah had abandoned him. The truth was so much worse. She'd been fighting his war. Against him. Trying to save innocence from the very machinery he'd set in motion. Alpha King? Marcus appeared in the doorway. The transport is ready. We need to move quickly if we want to get the Luna back to the Pack Doctor's facilities before. Seal this cabin, Damon interrupted. I want a full forensic team out here within the hour. Every body catalogued, every piece of evidence preserved. And Marcus? He turned to face his beta, letting every ounce of his fury show in his eyes. Start an investigation. Quiet. Discreet. I want everything we can find on border operations for the last 5 years. Every mission, every order, every wolf who died on rogue suppression operations. Marcus's eyes widened as understanding dawned. You think she was telling the truth? I think, Damon said carefully, that I've been a fool. And if I'm right about that, then I've been worse than a fool, I've been a monster wearing a crown. He walked out into the dawn light, where Sarah lay unconscious in the transport vehicle, surrounded by 10 orphan pups who'd already lost everything. The rising sun painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson, beautiful and terrible, like the truth he was beginning to uncover. Whatever had just happened in that cabin, whatever miracle or curse had pulled Sarah back from death's door, one thing was certain, nothing would ever be the same again. And as he climbed into the vehicle beside his Luna, Damon made himself a promise that went even deeper than the one he'd made to her. He would find out who'd been operating in his name. He would expose the rot in his kingdom. And he would make sure every wolf responsible for the massacres faced justice. Even if it meant tearing his entire world apart to do it. The vehicle pulled away from the cabin, leaving behind only blood and questions and the beginning of a reckoning that would shake the werewolf world to its foundations. Chapter 2. The palace medical wing had never felt so sterile, so cold. Damon stood outside the reinforced glass of the intensive care unit, watching as Dr. Winters and her team worked over Sarah's still form. The 10 pups had been settled in a specially prepared nursery adjacent to the medical bay, close enough that Sarah would sense them when she woke, if she woke, but far enough to keep them safe from whatever came next. If she woke. The thought made his wolf snarl with rage and despair. The preliminary blood work is back. Marcus appeared at his elbow, tablet in hand. His beta's face was carefully neutral, but Damon had known him for 15 years. He could read the tension in Marcus's shoulders, the way his jaw was set just a fraction too tight. And? The silver in her system, it's not ordinary silver, Alpha King. It's been alchemically treated, designed specifically to target wolf physiology at a cellular level. This kind of weaponry, it's military grade. Black market. Expensive. Damon's hands curled into fists. The kind of thing only someone with substantial resources and connections could acquire. Yes. Marcus hesitated. The kind of thing that would require council approval to develop and deploy. The words hung between them like a noose. Tell me about Silver Creek, Damon said quietly, his eyes never leaving Sarah's motionless form behind the glass. Tell me everything. Marcus's silence stretched too long. When Damon turned to look at him, his beta's face had gone pale. Marcus. Alpha King, I think we should discuss this in a more private. Tell me. Now. The Alpha command rolled through the words, undeniable. Marcus's shoulders sagged. 3 months after the Luna disappeared, intelligence reports came through the council indicating that Silver Creek Pack was harboring rogues. Dangerous rogues who'd been behind the attack at your mating ceremony. First Counselor Marcus. He paused, the coincidence of their shared name not lost on either of them, brought evidence that they were planning another strike. You weren't yourself then, Alpha King. The grief had. I know what the grief did. Damon's voice came out harsh. He remembered those months after Sarah's disappearance with crystal clarity and yet also as if through fog. Days blending together, rage and sorrow twisting into something toxic. Continue. The first counselor presented authorization documents. Said that swift action was necessary, that any delay would cost more pack lives. He said you'd already reviewed the intelligence and approved the operation. Marcus met his eyes. I saw the documents myself. They had your signature, your seal. Show me. Alpha King. Show me the documents. Now. 20 minutes later, Damon stood in his private office, staring at his own signature on papers he had no memory of signing. The authorization was dated 8 weeks after Sarah's disappearance, during what his staff had privately called his dark period, those months when he'd barely eaten, barely slept, when rage had been the only thing keeping him upright. He remembered almost nothing from that time with any clarity. This is my signature, he said slowly, tracing the familiar loops and slashes of his handwriting. But I don't remember signing this. I don't remember any briefing about Silver Creek being a threat. You were drinking heavily then, Marcus said quietly. The first counselor often brought documents to your quarters late at night. He said you preferred to handle sensitive matters privately. A cold pit opened in Damon's stomach. How many documents did I sign that way? How many operations did I authorize that I don't remember? I don't know. The first counselor handled most of your official business during that period. Marcus's expression darkened. Alpha King, I've served you since we were both teenagers. I've never doubted your judgment, never questioned your orders. But lately, some of the border operations, the aggression toward packs that requested asylum, the way the council has been pushing for more expansion. You thought I'd gone mad with grief and power, Damon finished. You thought I'd become my grandfather. The words tasted like ash. His grandfather had been a tyrant, a brutal Alpha King who'd ruled through fear and violence. It had taken Damon's father decades to rebuild the kingdom's reputation, to establish the codes of honor and protection that had been their legacy. Until Damon had apparently destroyed it all. I thought you were lost, Marcus admitted. I thought losing the Luna had broken something fundamental in you. But if these operations were authorized without your true consent, if the first counselor has been manipulating. A sharp knock interrupted them. Dr. Winters entered without waiting for permission, her face grave. She's deteriorating, the doctor said without preamble. The regeneration we saw at the cabin, it was temporary. Her body is shutting down again. Whatever brought her back, it's not enough to counteract the amount of silver in her system. Damon was moving before she finished speaking, striding toward the medical wing with Marcus and Dr. Winters scrambling to keep up. How long? He demanded. Hours. Maybe less. Dr. Winters's professional mask slipped, revealing the desperation underneath. Alpha King, I've tried everything. The only thing that might work, and it's a massive might, is a direct blood transfusion from a compatible wolf. Someone whose blood is strong enough to help her body fight the poison. Use mine. I was hoping you'd say that. Dr. Winters grabbed his arm, steering him toward a prep room adjacent to the ICU. But Alpha King, you need to understand the risks. A blood transfusion between mates is intense under normal circumstances. With a broken mate bond, with her body in this condition, the shock could kill you both. The bond isn't broken. Damon was suddenly certain of it, though he couldn't explain how he knew. She's been blocking it. I felt it at the cabin. It's there, buried deep, but it's there. Dr. Winters studied his face. If you're wrong. I'm not. He couldn't be. The alternative was unthinkable. The prep room was clinical and efficient. Dr. Winters worked quickly, establishing 4 lines in both his and Sarah's arms, setting up monitoring equipment that beeped and hummed with technological precision. Through the glass, Damon could see Sarah's pale face, so still she might have been carved from marble. This is going to hurt, Dr. Winters warned as she connected the lines. An Alpha King's blood is incredibly potent. The mixing process, if the bond is intact, will force it to resurface. If she's been suppressing it for 5 years, the snapback will be. The first drop of his blood entered Sarah's veins, and the world exploded. Pain, white-hot and all-consuming, ripped through Damon's chest. It felt like someone had reached into his ribcage and seized his heart, squeezing until he couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but endure. The mate bond, that golden thread he'd mourned for 5 years, suddenly blazed to life with the intensity of a supernova. But it wasn't gentle. It wasn't the warm, comforting presence he remembered from their early days together. It was agony. Every emotion Sarah had suppressed for 5 years came flooding through the bond at once. Terror, rage, grief, desperation, and underneath it all, a love so fierce and damaged it felt like swallowing broken glass. He felt her loneliness as she'd run from safe house to safe house, felt her horror as she'd witnessed massacre after massacre, felt her anguish as she'd gathered orphan pups from the corpses of their parents. Parents killed by soldiers bearing his seal. And woven through it all was the memory that had broken her. Their mating ceremony. The attack. Blood and smoke and screaming. Damon, his face twisted with rage, shouting orders. Clear the perimeter. Eliminate all threats. I don't care if they're begging, rogues show no mercy, and neither will we. She tried to reach him through the bond, tried to tell him that some of the rogues were terrified omegas with children, that not everyone attacking was actually attacking, that some were trying to escape the violence. But he hadn't listened. Grief-mad from his father's recent death, paranoid from council whispers about traitors and threats, he'd shut her out of the bond and given orders that resulted in dozens of deaths. Later, when the smoke cleared, she'd walked among the bodies. Seen the faces of wolves who'd been at their ceremony as guests, members of Silver Creek Pack who'd come to celebrate their union. Found a mother still clutching her child, both shot in the back as they'd tried to flee. And she'd heard Damon's first counselor whispering to him, "You see, my king? This is why we can't trust the low-born packs. They harbor traitors, even at sacred ceremonies. Your father's softness nearly destroyed us, but you have the strength to do what's necessary." She'd watched Damon nod, had felt through the bond as he'd hardened something inside himself, had seen the moment he'd decided that ruthlessness was strength. That night, she'd run. The memory released him, and Damon found himself on his knees beside the hospital bed, gasping for air. Dr. Winters was shouting something, but he couldn't hear her over the roaring in his ears. "I didn't know," he whispered, staring at Sarah's face. "I didn't know they were guests. I didn't know they were innocents." The first counselor said, "He told me." Marcus's hand was on his shoulder, steadying him. "Alpha King, your vitals are spiking dangerously." But Damon wasn't listening. Because Sarah's eyes were opening. And they were filled with absolute terror. She came up swinging, her hand connecting with his jaw with enough force to snap his head back. Despite her weakened state, despite the 4 lines and monitoring equipment, she moved with the desperate strength of a cornered wolf. "Get away from me." The words came out as a snarl, raw and primal. "Don't touch me, don't." "Sarah, it's okay, you're safe." Damon tried to catch her hands, but she was wild, fighting him with everything she had. "Liar." She tore the 4 from her arm, blood spattering across white sheets. "You're here to finish it, aren't you?" "The pups, where are the pups? What did you do with them?" "They're safe," Marcus said quickly, positioning himself where she could see him clearly, hands raised in a non-threatening gesture. "In the nursery, right next door. All 10 of them, healthy and protected. No one's going to hurt them." Sarah's eyes darted between them, feral and disbelieving. "Protected by him? By the Alpha King who ordered their parents slaughtered?" "I didn't." Damon's voice broke on the words. "Sarah, I swear to you, I never ordered any massacre. The documents were forged, or I was manipulated into signing them when I wasn't in my right mind. I've been searching for you for 5 years. I thought you were dead. I mourned you. I never stopped. You shut me out." The accusation ripped from her throat. "At the ceremony, when I tried to tell you that innocent wolves were dying, that your soldiers were killing guests, you severed the bond and shut me out. I felt it, Damon. I felt you choose rage over reason, violence over mercy. You became everything you swore you'd never be." The truth of it hit him like a physical blow. Because she was right. In his grief over his father's death, in his paranoia about threats to the pack, he had shut her out. He'd made it impossible for her to reach him when it mattered most. "I know," he said quietly. "I know I failed you. I failed everyone that night. But Sarah, I swear on my father's grave, on the crown, on our bond, I didn't know they were innocents. The first counselor told me they were rogues, told me they were the ones who'd planned the attack. I was wrong to trust him, wrong to shut you out, wrong to let my grief make me blind. But I never would have knowingly ordered the execution of innocent wolves." Sarah stared at him, her chest heaving with emotion. Through the newly restored bond, he could feel her warring instincts, the desperate need to believe him battling against 5 years of evidence to the contrary. "The pups," she finally said, her voice hoarse. "Show me the pups. Now." Dr. Winters moved quickly, unhooking monitoring equipment and bringing a wheelchair. Sarah tried to stand on her own and nearly collapsed. Damon caught her automatically, and for a moment, she let him bear her weight, let him support her as he helped her into the chair. The nursery was only steps away, but it felt like miles. When they entered, all 10 pups were curled together in a specially designed heated bed, sleeping peacefully. Little Luna, the gray one with white-tipped ears, lifted her head at Sarah's scent and let out a tiny, joyful yip. The sound broke something in Sarah. She was out of the wheelchair in an instant, dropping to her knees beside the bed, gathering Luna and the other pups against her chest. They swarmed her, whimpering and licking her face, their tiny bodies wriggling with relief. "I'm here," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I'm here, babies. You're safe. I promised I'd keep you safe." Damon watched from the doorway, his heart shattering and reforming with every breath. This was his Luna. The woman he'd loved, the woman he'd lost, the woman who'd spent 5 years alone, protecting children from the very kingdom that should have sheltered them. Marcus, he said quietly, not taking his eyes off Sarah and the pups. I want the first counselor in my office within the hour. I want every member of the council there. And I want a full audit of every military operation conducted in the last 5 years, every order, every authorization, every casualty report. That's going to make a lot of powerful wolves very nervous, Marcus warned. Good. Damon's voice hardened. They should be nervous. Because if what Sarah says is true, if my name and seal have been used to authorize atrocities, then everyone involved is going to face justice. I don't care how high up it goes. I don't care who I have to burn to make this right. And if the council resists? Then I'll burn the council too. Sarah looked up at him then, her eyes still swimming with tears and distrust, but underneath it, through the bond, he felt something else. Not forgiveness, that would take far more than words and promises. But perhaps the first fragile seed of hope. You want to make this right? She asked, her voice raw. Then start by telling me the truth about that night. All of it. What really happened at the ceremony? Why you shut me out? Why you became someone I didn't recognize? Damon moved into the room slowly, carefully, giving her space to retreat if she needed it. He lowered himself to the floor across from her, the pups forming a living barrier between them. The night of the ceremony, he began, each word feeling like pulling teeth, was supposed to be the happiest of my life. I was mating my fated match, cementing an alliance that I thought would strengthen the kingdom, honoring my father's memory by continuing his legacy of unity and peace. He paused, gathering his thoughts. Through the bond, he could feel Sarah's attention, sharp and focused. But my father had been dead for only 3 months. I was drowning in grief and responsibility, and I wasn't ready. The council, especially the first counselor, kept telling me I needed to be strong, needed to show that the kingdom wouldn't weaken under my rule. They pushed me toward harsh policies, toward viewing every outsider as a potential threat. And you listened to them, Sarah said, not quite an accusation, but close. I listened because I was afraid, Damon admitted. Afraid that I couldn't fill my father's shoes, that I'd be the one to destroy everything he'd built. The first counselor was my father's most trusted advisor. I thought he was guiding me toward strength. I didn't realize until much later that he was guiding me toward tyranny. One of the pups, the brown one Sarah had called Marcus, crawled toward Damon, sniffing curiously at his hand. Damon held perfectly still, barely breathing, as the tiny creature investigated him. When the attack happened, he continued, I panicked. All I could think was that I couldn't lose anyone else, couldn't fail to protect the pack the way I'd felt I'd failed to save my father. The first counselor was in my ear immediately, shouting about rogues and traitors, about how they'd infiltrated the ceremony, how we had to act fast and hard or we'd lose everything. So you gave the order to eliminate all threats, Sarah finished, her voice hollow. I gave the order to protect the pack. I thought, he had to stop, had to swallow past the self-loathing rising in his throat. I thought I was being strong. Decisive. The kind of leader the kingdom needed. You were being manipulated. Dr. Winters spoke up from the doorway, her voice clinical but not unkind. Alpha King, I've reviewed your medical records from that period. The amount of grief and stress you were under, combined with the compounds the first counselor was providing you. Compounds? Sarah's head snapped up. What compounds? Sleep aids, he called them. Herbal supplements to help with the insomnia and anxiety. Dr. Winters's expression was grim. I've just had them analyzed. They contain trace amounts of wolfsbane extract, not enough to poison, but enough to cloud judgment, increase paranoia, and make the user more susceptible to suggestion. The words fell into the room like stones. He was drugging you, Sarah breathed. That's why you couldn't hear me through the bond. Why you seemed like a different person. That's why I don't remember signing half the documents from that period, Damon realized, rage building in his chest like a living thing. He wasn't just manipulating me, he was chemically altering my judgment. For 5 years? Marcus's voice was tight with barely controlled fury. How did no one notice? Because he's the first counselor, Damon said bitterly. Because everyone trusted him the way I did. Because by the time the dosages became less frequent, I'd already developed the habits and policies he'd pushed me toward. I thought I was making my own choices. But you weren't. Sarah's eyes were still hard, but something in them had shifted. You were being controlled. That doesn't excuse it. Damon met her gaze directly, unflinching. Drugged or not, manipulated or not, I'm the Alpha King. I'm responsible for what happens in my name, for the orders given under my seal. Those wolves still died. Those pups still lost their families. And his voice cracked. I still shut you out when you tried to warn me. I still chose to believe the worst instead of trusting you. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the soft sounds of the pups settling down for sleep. Little Luna had fallen asleep draped across Sarah's lap, her tiny body rising and falling with peaceful breaths. Finally, Sarah spoke. When I left that night, I thought I'd be gone for a few days. Maybe a week. Long enough for you to clear your head, see what you'd done, realize the path you were heading down. Her hand stroked Luna's fur with infinite gentleness. I went to Silver Creek Pack to offer them sanctuary, to try to prevent whatever retaliation I knew the first counselor was planning. But when I got there, the soldiers were already there, Damon finished, the pieces falling into place with horrible clarity. They said they had orders from the Alpha King. That Silver Creek Pack had harbored the rogues who attacked the mating ceremony and had to be eliminated as an example. Sarah's voice had gone flat, emotionless. The tone of someone recounting trauma they'd relived too many times. I watched them burn homes with families still inside. I heard the Alphas begging, calling your name, invoking the ancient laws of sanctuary and mercy. The soldiers laughed and said those laws died with your father. Damon felt sick. I saved who I could, Sarah continued. Grabbed the pups and omegas who could run, led them into the forest. We spent 3 days hiding in a cave system, listening to the soldiers hunt for survivors. When they finally left, I went back to the pack lands. There were no survivors except the ones I'd hidden. And you couldn't come back to me, Damon said, understanding flooding through him. Because as far as you knew, I was the one who'd ordered it. You were the Alpha King. Your seal was on the orders. Your soldiers carried them out. Sarah's eyes were dry now, but the pain in them was devastating. What was I supposed to think? That I'd become a monster? Yes. The simple honesty of it cut deeper than any accusation could have. So I ran, Sarah said. Kept moving, kept gathering orphans, kept trying to stay ahead of the soldiers. Every few months, I'd hear about another pack being neutralized, another group of wolves being executed for harboring rogues. I started recognizing the pattern. They were targeting the packs that had been at our mating ceremony. The ones who'd witnessed what happened. The ones who might question the official story. A systematic purge, Marcus breathed. Of everyone who could contradict the first counselor's narrative. And I thought, Sarah's voice finally broke. I thought it was you. I thought you decided that anyone who'd seen you at your weakest, anyone who knew the truth about that night, had to die. So I did the only thing I could. I saved who I could, and I kept running. Damon wanted to reach for her, wanted to pull her into his arms and promise that everything would be all right. But he couldn't. Not yet. Not when 5 years of horror stood between them. I'm going to fix this, he said instead. I'm going to find everyone responsible, the first counselor, the generals who carried out the orders, every soldier who pulled a trigger. And I'm going to make sure the whole kingdom knows the truth about what happened. And then what? Sarah asked. You execute them? More violence? More death? No. The word came out firm and certain. Then we hold trials. Public trials, with full transparency. We let every pack in the kingdoms see exactly how their alpha king was manipulated, how his seal was misused, how the laws and values we're supposed to uphold were corrupted. We give the victims' families justice, real justice, not revenge. That will destroy your authority, Sarah said. Admitting you were manipulated, that you lost control of your own kingdom. The other alphas will see it as weakness. They'll challenge you. Let them. Damon's wolf surged forward, making his eyes flash gold. I don't want authority built on lies and atrocities. I don't want a kingdom that operates in the shadows, that murders innocents and calls it security. If admitting the truth costs me the crown, then I don't deserve to wear it anyway. For the first time since she'd woken, Sarah looked at him. Really looked at him, not with the eyes of a survivor assessing a threat, but with the eyes of someone seeing a person. You mean that, she said softly, wonder in her voice. Every word. The Damon I knew would have said the same thing. But the Damon I left, the one consumed by grief and rage, he never would have. Her hand moved unconsciously to her chest, to where the mate bond pulsed between them. What happened? What changed? Nothing changed, Damon said simply. I just woke up. It took 5 years in finding you dying in a cabin, but I finally woke up from the nightmare the first counselor trapped me in. Sarah studied his face for a long moment, and through the bond, he felt her testing the connection, carefully probing the strength and sincerity of what flowed between them. I can't forgive you, she finally said. Not yet. Maybe not ever. There's too much blood, too much pain. These pups lost their families because of orders that bore your seal. I lost 5 years of my life running from the mate I was supposed to spend forever with. I know. But, she took a shaky breath. But I also can't ignore what I'm feeling through the bond. You're telling the truth. About being manipulated, about not knowing, about wanting to make it right. Her eyes hardened. So I'm going to give you a chance. One chance. To prove that the mate I chose still exists somewhere inside the king you became. What do you need me to do? Start with the first counselor, Sarah said, her voice turning to steel. Bring him here. Let me look him in the eyes when you confront him with what he's done. Let me see if you really have the strength to tear down everything you've built for the sake of what's right. Damon stood, every line of his body radiating deadly purpose. Consider it done. As he strode toward the door, Sarah's voice stopped him. Damon? He turned back. The pups need names, she said, her hand still gently stroking Luna's sleeping form. Real names, not just descriptions. They need to be more than just survivors of a massacre. They need to be children with futures. Then we'll name them, Damon said. Together. After we've dealt with the bastards who made them orphans. He left the nursery with Marcus at his heels, his mind already cataloging what needed to happen next. Confront the first counselor. Audit the military operations. Expose the truth. Burn down his kingdom if he had to, and rebuild it from ashes into something worthy of the wolves he'd failed. Behind him, through the bond he'd thought lost forever, he felt Sarah's exhaustion, her pain, her fragile hope. And underneath it all, buried but not dead, the mate bond that had once burned bright enough to light up the world. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was a beginning. And for the first time in 5 years, beginning felt like enough. Chapter 3. The dawn light filtering through the nursery windows caught the silver in Luna's fur, making the tiny pup shimmer like moonlight. She hadn't left Sarah's side for 3 hours, not even when Dr. Winters had insisted on another examination. The pup's small body trembled whenever Damon moved too close, her whimpers cutting through him like silver blades. I'm not going back to the palace. Sarah's voice was hoarse but firm. She sat in the oversized chair Dr. Winters had brought in, wrapped in blankets, with Luna curled in her lap and the other 9 pups arranged protectively around her feet. You can't make me. Sarah, you need proper medical care, Damon began. I need to keep these pups alive. That's what I need. Her eyes flashed with fierce protectiveness. And I won't do that by walking back into the den of the wolves who've been hunting us for 5 years. Then we'll bring the medical equipment here, Damon said, forcing his voice to remain calm even as his wolf howled at the distance she was putting between them. Whatever you need, wherever you feel safe. Safe? The word came out bitter as wolfsbane. I haven't been safe since the night of our mating ceremony. Since the night your soldiers, her voice cracked, and she pulled Luna closer, burying her face in the pup's soft fur. Damon exchanged a glance with Marcus, who stood near the door with Tobias, Damon's head of security. Both men wore identical expressions of grim concern. Tell me, Damon said quietly, lowering himself to the floor several feet away from her. Close enough to hear, far enough not to threaten. Tell me everything that happened. Not the summary, not the highlights. Every detail you can remember. Sarah was silent for so long he thought she might refuse. Then, still not looking at him, she began to speak. The ceremony was beautiful. Perfect. Her voice had gone distant, hollow. I remember thinking that I was the luckiest Omega alive. A low-born wolf from Silver Creek Pack, mated to the Alpha King himself. It felt like a fairy tale. It should have been, Damon said, his chest tight. When the attack started, I thought it was rogues. Real rogues, the kind that actually deserve that name. There was so much chaos, so much screaming. You were shouting orders, and I tried to reach you through the bond to help coordinate, to tell you what I was seeing from my position near the east entrance. She paused, her hand trembling as she stroked Luna's fur. But you shut me out. I felt it, like a door slamming in my face. The bond went cold, and suddenly I couldn't feel you anymore. I thought maybe you were overwhelmed, that you'd open it back up once things calmed down. So I did what I could on my own. I helped guests escape, sheltered the Omegas and Pups in the safe rooms, tried to organize an orderly evacuation. You were always better at crisis management than me, Damon said softly. Through the fragile bond between them, he could feel her pain like it was his own. I saw your soldiers killing people who were trying to surrender. Wolves from Silver Creek, my pack, who'd come as guests, who'd brought gifts and well wishes. They were begging for mercy, showing their throats in submission, and your guards were executing them anyway. Her voice hardened. I tried to stop them. Pulled rank as the new Luna. They laughed in my face and told me the Alpha King's orders superseded mine. That all rogues were to be eliminated. They weren't rogues, Damon breathed. They were innocent guests. I know that. You should have known that too. Sarah finally looked at him, and the accusation in her eyes was devastating. But you were too consumed with rage and grief to see clearly. The first counselor was at your shoulder the entire time, whispering poison in your ear about traitors and threats. And you listened to him instead of me. The truth of it was a knife between his ribs. After the ceremony, I went to my quarters and I screamed into my pillow until my throat was raw. I wanted to confront you, to force you to see what you'd done. But the bond was still closed, and your guards were posted outside my door. Not to protect me, to keep me contained. I didn't order that, Damon said immediately. Didn't you? Sarah's laugh was sharp and humorless. Or did you just not remember ordering it, like all the other things you conveniently can't recall? Tobias shifted uncomfortably near the door, but Damon held up a hand to keep him silent. Sarah needed to get this out, needed him to hear it all. 3 days later, I overheard the first counselor and some generals discussing Silver Creek. They were planning a punitive expedition, that's what they called it. Punishment for harboring the rogues who'd attacked the ceremony. Except I knew for a fact that Silver Creek hadn't harbored any rogues. The wolves who'd been killed at the ceremony were legitimate pack members, their unofficial invitation. She took a shuddering breath. I tried to get to you, to warn you. But you were in closed council meetings for hours at a time, and when I finally saw you, you looked right through me like I was a stranger. You told me that state matters were above my concern and that I should focus on appropriate Luna duties like planning charity events and selecting china patterns. Damon closed his eyes against the memory trying to surface. He remembered saying something like that, remembered the cold fury in his own voice. But the context was fuzzy, dreamlike. Had he really been that cruel to his own mate? So I left, Sarah continued. Snuck out of the palace before dawn and ran for Silver Creek. I thought if I could get there first, if I could evacuate the vulnerable pack members before your soldiers arrived, then maybe I could prevent another massacre. But you didn't make it in time. I made it with 6 hours to spare. Her voice went flat again, emotionless. I warned the Alpha. Told him to evacuate immediately, to scatter the pack and seek sanctuary with neighboring territories. He believed me, how could he not, when I was the Luna herself? They started evacuating families to the cave systems in the northern mountains. She was quiet for a long moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. Your soldiers came at dawn. Not a scouting party, a full military force. Royal Guard in their formal armor, carrying the Alpha King's banner. They surrounded the pack lands before anyone realized what was happening. The Alpha tried to parley, invoke the ancient laws of sanctuary. They shot him where he stood. Damon felt sick. Then they started on the houses. Systematic. Efficient. They went door to door, dragging out anyone who hadn't made it to the caves. Women. Children. Elders too old to run. They lined them up in the pack square and, her voice broke. And they executed them. One by one. Made the survivors watch. Sarah. The children were crying for their mothers. The mothers were begging for their children's lives. And your soldiers, wolves wearing your seal, following your orders, they shot them all. Every single one. Tears were streaming down her face now, though her voice remained eerily calm. I was hidden in the tree line with a group of Omegas and Pups. We had to watch. Had to stay silent and watch them murder our pack, because if we made a sound, they'd find us too. One of the Pups, the brown one with black paws, whimpered and pressed closer to Sarah's leg. She reached down automatically to comfort him, her movements practiced and gentle despite the horror she was reliving. When it was over, the soldiers set fire to everything. The houses, the pack hall, even the gardens. They wanted to erase every trace that Silver Creek pack had ever existed. Then they started hunting for survivors. How did you escape? Marcus asked quietly from the doorway. We didn't, not really. We hid in the cave system for 3 days. No food, no water after the first day. The soldiers had tracking dogs, proper bloodhounds, not wolf trackers, because wolves can't track in caves as easily. We kept moving deeper, further into the mountain. By the 4th day, they gave up and left. They thought they'd gotten everyone. She looked down at Luna, at the silver pup who'd fallen asleep in her lap. When we finally came out, Silver Creek was gone. Just, gone. Burned to ash, bodies left to rot in the square. I counted 47 dead. 47 wolves slaughtered in your name. And the pups? Damon asked, though he already knew the answer. Orphans. All of them. Some had watched their parents die. Others had been hidden by family members who sacrificed themselves to buy time. Luna here. Sarah's hand trembled as she touched the silver pup's ear. Her mother shoved her into my arms and told me to run. Then she stayed behind to slow down the soldiers. I heard the gunshot as we entered the caves. The silence in the room was suffocating. For 5 years, Sarah continued, I've been running. Moving from place to place, gathering orphans from other massacres. Because Silver Creek wasn't the only one, was it? Every few months, I'd hear reports of another pack being neutralized. Moonstone. Riverside. Shadow Pine. All of them had one thing in common, they'd sent representatives to our mating ceremony. They'd witnessed what happened that night. A systematic purge, Tobias said, his face pale. Of potential witnesses. And I kept running, kept hiding, kept saving every pup I could. Sarah's eyes met Damon's, and in them, he saw 5 years of exhaustion, terror, and grief. Do you know what it's like, living every day knowing that the mate you loved, the man you thought would protect you, is instead the one hunting you? Wondering every night if this is the night his soldiers find you, if this is the night those pups lose another caretaker? I didn't know, Damon said, his voice breaking. Sarah, I swear on everything sacred, I didn't know. I would never have ordered. But you did. She reached into her pocket with her free hand and pulled out a crumpled, stained piece of paper. I took this from one of the soldiers' bodies after a fight 8 months ago. Read it. Damon unfolded the paper with shaking hands. It was an execution order, bearing his seal and signature, commanding the complete elimination of Silver Creek Pack for treasonous harboring of rogue elements. The language was formal, official, undeniably authentic. And it made him want to vomit. Tobias, he said hoarsely, holding out the document. Analysis. Now. His head of security took the paper carefully, examining it under the light. He pulled out a small kit from his jacket, running tests that Damon didn't fully understand. Minutes passed in tense silence. The seal is genuine, Tobias finally said. But the handwriting. He pulled out his tablet, bringing up comparison samples of Damon's signature. Alpha King, this isn't your hand. It's close, very close. But look at the loop on the D and the cross on the T, your natural writing slants slightly right. This slants left, like someone was deliberately trying to copy your style. Forged, Marcus breathed. Someone forged the Alpha King's signature on execution orders. Not just someone. Tobias's expression was grim. Someone with access to the royal seal, intimate knowledge of the Alpha King's handwriting, and the authority to deploy Royal Guard units without question. All eyes turned to the door, where First Counselor Marcus had just entered, flanked by 2 guards. Ah, the First Counselor said smoothly, taking in the scene. I heard there was a commotion. The lost Luna returns, I see. How unexpected. Sarah went rigid in her chair, Luna waking with a startled yip. The other pups began to growl, actual growls, despite their young age, their tiny bodies bristling with instinctive hostility. Marcus, Damon said, standing slowly. I need you to explain something to me. Of course, my king. I live to serve. Explain why execution orders bearing forged versions of my signature have been used to authorize the systematic slaughter of innocent packs. Explain why Silver Creek, Moonstone, Riverside, and a dozen other packs have been wiped out in my name without my knowledge. Explain, his voice dropped to a dangerous growl. Why my mate has spent 5 years running from soldiers following orders I never gave. The First Counselor's smooth expression didn't falter. My king, I'm afraid you're confused. These orders weren't forged, you signed them yourself. You simply don't remember due to the stress you were under at the time. I have witnesses, documentation. Lies. Sarah's voice cut through the room like a blade. You've been drugging him. Altering his memory. Making him suggestible so you could manipulate him into becoming the tyrant you needed. Preposterous. I would never. Dar. Winters found wolfsbane extract in the supplements you provided, Damon said coldly. The ones you personally delivered to my quarters every night for years. The ones that supposedly helped me sleep. For the first time, a crack appeared in the First Counselor's composure. There must be some mistake. The only mistake, Tobias said, stepping forward with his tablet, was thinking you'd covered your tracks well enough. We've been reviewing palace security footage for the last 3 hours. This shows you entering the Alpha King's quarters at 2 a.m., 6 months ago, when he was heavily sedated from one of your supplements. He turned the tablet to show the footage. On screen, the First Counselor could be seen placing documents in front of the unconscious Damon, guiding his hand to sign them, then removing the papers and leaving. You drugged me, Damon said, his voice deadly quiet. You chemically altered my mind, forged my signature on execution orders, and orchestrated the slaughter of innocent packs. All while I was too compromised to know what was happening. It was necessary, the first counselor said, his mask finally dropping to reveal the fanatic underneath. Your father's weakness nearly destroyed this kingdom. His soft policies, his tolerance of low-born wolves and mixed-blood packs, it made us vulnerable. I did what was needed to make us strong again. By murdering children? Sarah stood, Luna clutched protectively to her chest. By slaughtering entire packs? That's not strength, you monster. That's genocide. It was elimination of inferior bloodlines. The first counselor's lip curled. Omega packs like Silver Creek dilute the strength of our race. They breed weakness, produce wolves like you, pretty, perhaps, but fundamentally unsuited for power. The Alpha King needed a strong mate, a pure-blooded alpha female who could give him proper heirs. Not a low-born Omega who'd fill his head with soft-hearted nonsense about mercy and peace. Damon moved before anyone could stop him, his hand closing around the first counselor's throat, lifting him off the ground. His eyes blazed gold, his wolf barely contained beneath his skin. You killed innocent wolves, he snarled. You destroyed entire packs. You drove my mate into exile and made me an unknowing accomplice to atrocities. Give me one reason why I shouldn't tear your throat out right now. Because you need me, the first counselor choked out. I'm not working alone. Half your council supports the purges. The military command structure is riddled with wolves loyal to our cause. Kill me, and you'll have a civil war on your hands. Then I'll have a civil war. Damon's grip tightened. I'd rather fight an honest war than rule through lies and manipulation. Alpha King. Tobias's voice was urgent. He's right. We've identified at least 15 high-ranking officials who were complicit in the forgeries and executions. If you execute him without due process, without proper trials, they'll use it as justification to move against you. They'll claim you've gone rogue, that the Omega has poisoned your mind. You'll lose the kingdom. Damon wanted to argue, wanted to say he didn't care about the kingdom if this was what it had become. But through the bond, he felt Sarah's attention on him, felt her testing to see what he would do. Slowly, he lowered the first counselor to the ground, though he didn't release his throat. You'll be held in the palace dungeons, he said, his voice barely human. Under maximum security. No visitors, no communication with the outside world. And then you'll stand trial, publicly, with full transparency, for your crimes. Every wolf in the kingdom will see what you've done. They'll see the evidence, hear the testimony, know the truth about what's been happening in my name. You're signing your own death warrant, the first counselor wheezed. The purebloods will never accept an Omega Luna. They'll tear you down rather than submit to her influence. Then let them try. Damon released him, shoving him toward the guards. Take him. Maximum security cell. If he so much as breathes wrong, I want to know about it. As the guards dragged the first counselor away, his last words echoed through the nursery. This isn't over, boy king. You think you've won, but you've just declared war on everyone who kept you in power. You'll beg me for mercy before this is through. The door slammed behind him, leaving heavy silence in his wake. Sarah sank back into her chair, Luna whimpering in her arms. The other pups had formed a protective circle around her, their small bodies trembling but defiant. He's right, you know, she said quietly. About the Civil War. About the pure bloods. Taking me back, protecting these pups, standing against the council, it's political suicide. I don't care. Damon turned to face her, letting her see the absolute conviction in his eyes. I don't care if it costs me the crown, the kingdom, everything. I won't be the kind of king who rules through genocide. I won't be the monster they tried to make me. She studied him for a long moment, and through the bond, he felt her walls beginning to crack. Not crumbling, not yet, but developing the first hairline fractures that suggested hope. I'll come back to the palace, she finally said. For the pups. They need proper shelter, medical care, safety. But Damon, her voice hardened. I want your oath. Your alpha oath, sworn on the bond we share. You will execute every conspirator yourself. Not delegate it to soldiers, not hide behind royal decree. You will look them in the eyes and deliver justice personally for every life they took. The demand was brutal, uncompromising. An alpha oath was binding, break it, and he'd lose his power, possibly his life. To swear to personally execute potentially dozens of wolves, many of them high-ranking officials he'd worked with for years. I swear it, Damon said without hesitation. On my alpha authority, on the mate bond we share, on my honor and my crown, I will personally deliver justice to every wolf who participated in the massacres. I will look them in the eyes, hear their crimes spoken aloud, and execute them myself if found guilty by fair trial. The oath settled over him like chains, binding and absolute. Through the bond, he felt Sarah's surprise at his immediate acceptance. Then we'll return to the palace, she said. But I'm not staying in the Luna quarters. I won't sleep in those rooms, won't pretend everything is fine. The pups and I will need our own wing, secure, private, with guards I approve. Whatever you need, Damon agreed immediately. And I want Tobias to teach me combat training. Real training, not the decorative self-defense they teach Omegas. If your council is planning to move against you, against us, I won't be helpless again. Done. And, she hesitated, her hand tightening on Luna's fur. And you stay out of the bond unless I explicitly invite you in. No pushing, no trying to force a connection. If we're going to have any chance of rebuilding what was destroyed, it has to be on my terms. At my pace. That one hurt, but Damon nodded. Agreed. Sarah stood carefully, gathering her strength. The other pups clustered around her feet, looking up at her with absolute trust and devotion. Luna, still in her arms, nuzzled her neck with a soft, contented sound. Then let's go, she said. Before I change my mind. The journey back to the palace took 2 hours by convoy. Damon had insisted on maximum security, armored vehicles, elite guards, the works. Sarah rode in the lead vehicle with the pups, Dr. Winters monitoring her vitals constantly. Damon rode in the vehicle behind, close enough to respond to any threat but far enough to give her space. Through the convoy's communication system, he could hear the pup sounds, playful yips and growls as they explored the vehicle, Luna's distinctive higher-pitched whimpers whenever Sarah tried to set her down. She's completely bonded to the Luna, Dr. Winters's voice came through the speaker. I've never seen a pup this young form such a strong attachment. She won't eat unless Sarah's holding her, won't sleep unless she's in contact with her. Trauma bonding, Tobias said from the driver's seat. The pup lost her mother during the massacre. Sarah's become her entire world. Damon stared out the window at the passing landscape, his mind cataloging everything that needed to happen. Secure the palace. Identify all conspirators. Prepare for the trials. Fortify defenses in case of civil war. Rebuild his mate's trust somehow, against impossible odds. The list was overwhelming. But through the bond he'd sworn not to push into, he felt something that gave him hope, Sarah's determination. She wasn't giving up. Wasn't running anymore. She was choosing to fight, not for him, not yet, but for those pups. For justice. For the possibility that maybe, somehow, they could salvage something from the wreckage. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't even really trust. But it was a beginning. As the palace came into view on the horizon, Damon made himself a promise. He would dismantle everything the first counselor had built. Would tear down every corrupt system, expose every conspirator, root out every wolf who'd participated in the atrocities. Even if it cost him everything. Even if Sarah never forgave him. Even if he lost the crown, the kingdom, his life. Because those pups deserved a world where they didn't have to run. Where their silver fur didn't mark them for death. Where an Omega could be Luna without it being a death sentence. And he would build that world, or die trying. Luna's whimper came through the speakers again, and this time Damon heard Sarah's soft voice responding, Hush, baby girl. I've got you. You're safe now. I promise. The words weren't meant for him. But Damon held on to them anyway, a lifeline in the storm he'd created. Safe. Protected. Home. Maybe someday, those words would apply to him too. But for now, it was enough that they applied to the innocence he'd failed. It had to be enough. Because it was all he had left. Chapter 4. The palace gates swung open like the jaws of a predator, and Sarah felt every instinct in her body scream at her to run. 5 years ago, she'd fled through a servant's entrance in the dead of night, her heart shattered and her hands still stained with the blood of wolves she'd tried to save. Now she was returning through the front gates in an armored convoy, with 10 orphaned pups and a mate who was practically a stranger. The grand courtyard was filled with nobles and court officials, assembled to witness the Luna's miraculous return. Sarah could feel their eyes on her, could smell the mixture of curiosity, disdain, and calculation rolling off them in waves. And standing at the top of the marble stairs, positioned exactly where a Luna should stand, was Lady Celeste of the Northern Highlands. She was beautiful in the way a blade was beautiful, all sharp edges and cold perfection. Her blonde hair was arranged in an elaborate style that probably took her maids hours to achieve, and her gown was the deep crimson of fresh blood. Diamonds glittered at her throat and wrists, marking her as a wolf of considerable wealth and status. Everything Sarah wasn't. Oh my, Celeste's voice carried across the courtyard, pitched perfectly to sound concerned while dripping with condescension. Is that really her? She looks positively feral. Sarah glanced down at herself. Her clothes were still torn and bloodstained from the fight at the cabin. Her hair hung in tangled waves around her face. She probably did look feral. She couldn't bring herself to care. Lady Celeste. Damon's voice was ice as he exited his vehicle and moved to intercept the woman. You weren't informed because this is not your concern. Not my concern? Celeste's laugh was like breaking glass. Darling, I've been managing your household for 3 years. I've been your companion, your advisor, your... Nothing. Damon cut her off sharply. You've been nothing to me but a political convenience that I'm now realizing was a strategic placement. Celeste's perfect smile didn't waver, but Sarah saw the flash of rage in her eyes. I see. The lost Omega returns with her collection of strays, and suddenly 5 years of loyalty means nothing. Loyalty? Sarah found her voice, stepping out of the vehicle with Luna clutched to her chest. The other 9 pups tumbled out behind her, staying close to her legs. Is that what you call helping your uncle orchestrate massacres? Helping drug and manipulate an alpha king? That's an interesting definition of loyalty. The courtyard went silent. Celeste's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing the venom underneath. Careful, Omega. You've been gone a long time. You don't know how things work here anymore. The court has standards now. We don't tolerate mongrels and diseased blood. She looked pointedly at the pups clustered around Sarah's feet. These children, Sarah said, her voice deadly quiet, are orphans. Their parents were slaughtered by soldiers following forged orders. They've survived horrors you couldn't imagine in your pampered life. And if you ever call them mongrels again, I will forget I'm supposed to be a civilized Luna and tear your throat out myself. Several of the assembled nobles gasped. Celeste's eyes widened, then narrowed with malicious glee. Did you hear that? She called out to the crowd. The Omega threatens violence in the Alpha King's own courtyard. She's clearly unstable, possibly rabid. Who knows what diseases she picked up living like an animal in the wilderness. Enough. Damon's Alpha command rolled across the courtyard like thunder. Several wolves, Celeste included, dropped their eyes automatically. Lady Celeste, you have 1 hour to remove yourself and your belongings from this palace. Any attempt to remain will be considered trespassing, and you will be removed by force. You can't be serious. For the first time, genuine shock cracked through Celeste's composure. I'm a daughter of the Northern Highlands. My family is one of the oldest. Your family is also under investigation for conspiracy and treason, Tobias said, stepping forward with his tablet. We have evidence linking your uncle to the forgeries and massacres. Unless you can prove you had no knowledge of his activities, I suggest you cooperate fully and leave peacefully. Celeste's face went white, then red with fury. This is her doing, she spat, pointing at Sarah. She's poisoned you against your own court, your own allies. She's nothing but a low-born Omega with delusions of grandeur. My uncle was right, she'll destroy this kingdom if you let her stay. 1 hour, Damon repeated, his voice flat and final. After that, security will escort you out. Celeste stared at him for a long moment, and Sarah saw murder in her eyes. Then she turned and swept back into the palace, her gown trailing behind her like blood. The assembled nobles began whispering immediately, a sound like wasps swarming. Sarah could pick out fragments, disgrace. Proper Luna. Those creatures. Disperse, Damon commanded. All of you. Court is suspended until further notice. The nobles scattered, though Sarah could feel their attention clinging to her like oil. She'd made enemies in less than 5 minutes back at the palace. Probably a record. This way. Damon gestured toward a side entrance, away from the main palace. The east wing is secure and private. It should give you the space you need. Sarah followed, the pups trailing behind her in a protective formation. Luna whimpered in her arms, her small body trembling. It's okay, baby, Sarah murmured, stroking the silver pup's ears. We're safe. I promise. But as they walked through marble halls that felt more like a mausoleum than a home, Sarah wasn't sure she believed her own words. The East Wing had once housed visiting dignitaries and honored guests. Now it was clearly abandoned, furniture covered in dust sheets, windows dark, the air stale with disuse. But it was also defensible, with only one main entrance and several escape routes Sarah immediately catalogued. I'll have staff clean and prepare it properly, Damon said, standing awkwardly in what would become her sitting room. Fresh linens, food, whatever you need. I need you to leave. Sarah's voice came out harsher than she intended, but she was at the end of her rope. The confrontation with Celeste, the hostile nobles, the sheer exhaustion of holding herself together, it was too much. Damon flinched but nodded. I'll post guards outside. Tobias's most trusted wolves, they'll die before they let anyone harm you or the pups. Fine. He hesitated at the door, and through the bond she'd forbidden him to push into, Sarah felt his longing to stay, to help, to do something that would make this better. But there was nothing he could do. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Sarah. Please just go. He left, and the silence that followed felt heavier than his presence. The next week was a blur of activity. Staff came and went, transforming the abandoned wing into something livable. Dr. Winters visited twice daily to check on Sarah and the pups. Guards rotated in 12-hour shifts, their presence both reassuring and suffocating. And Sarah slowly fell apart. The silver poisoning had done more damage than she'd initially realized. She couldn't shift, every time she tried, pain lanced through her body, and her wolf whimpered and retreated. Her healing was glacially slow, cuts that should have closed in hours took days. She was weak in a way she'd never been weak before, and it terrified her. The pups sensed it, of course. They were extra gentle with her, extra clingy. Luna refused to be put down for more than a few minutes at a time. The brown one with black paws, Marcus, as Sarah had started calling him, would sit pressed against her legs for hours. The twins, Ash and Ember, took turns keeping watch while she rested. At night, when the palace was quiet and the pups were supposed to be sleeping, Sarah would sing old Silver Creek lullabies that her mother had sung to her, songs about moonlight and running free and coming home. Her voice would crack on certain words, and tears would stream down her face, but she sang anyway. For the pups who'd never know their birth packs. For the parents who'd died protecting them. For the home she'd lost and could never reclaim. She thought she was alone during these moments. thought the darkness and stone walls hid her grief. She didn't know that Damon stood in the shadows of the corridor every night, listening to her break, his own heart shattering with every note. The assassination attempt came on the 8th night. Sarah had just finished singing the pups to sleep, had finally managed to doze off herself with Luna curled under her chin, when instinct jolted her awake. Something was wrong. The air smelled wrong, acrid, chemical, underneath the usual palace scents. She sat up carefully, trying not to disturb Luna, and spotted it, a covered tray that hadn't been there before, sitting on the low table near the pup's sleeping nest. Steam rose from beneath the silver dome, carrying the scent of roasted meat and herbs. And underneath those pleasant smells, poison. Sarah's heart stopped. The pups were starting to stir, drawn by the scent of food. Little Marcus was already toddling toward the tray, his nose twitching with interest. No. Sarah lunged, scooping him up before he could reach it. Guards. The door burst open, but instead of the guards she expected, a figure in black slipped through, blade gleaming in the dim light. Sarah had no weapons. No strength for a prolonged fight. Just 10 pups and a body that could barely hold itself upright. But she'd survived 5 years on the run. She knew how to fight when it mattered. The assassin came at her fast, blade aimed for her throat. Sarah twisted, taking the strike on her shoulder instead. Pain exploded through her, hot and sharp, but not fatal. She used the momentum to drive her elbow into the assassin's face, felt bone crunch under the impact. The assassin stumbled back, and Sarah pressed her advantage despite her screaming muscles. She had to end this fast, before. The assassin recovered, faster than she'd anticipated. The blade came up again, and this time Sarah couldn't dodge. She threw herself backward, shielding the pups with her body, and waited for the killing blow. It never came. Instead, a roar split the air, inhuman, primal, the sound of an alpha king's wolf given full rein. Damon exploded through the doorway, and the transformation was immediate and terrifying. His eyes blazed pure gold, his face partially shifted, claws extending from hands that were no longer entirely human. He didn't hesitate. Didn't pause to assess the threat or calculate a strategy. He simply moved, faster than Sarah's eyes could track, and his claws tore through the assassin's throat like paper. Blood sprayed across the floor, the walls, Damon himself. The assassin's body dropped, twitching once before going still. And Damon stood over it, chest heaving, blood dripping from his claws, his wolf still riding so close to the surface that his form flickered between human and beast. This was the monster grief had made him. Sarah stared, Luna clutched protectively to her chest, and for the first time understood viscerally what Damon had become in her absence. Not just cold or ruthless, fundamentally changed. His wolf had been given too much freedom, fed on too much rage and violence. It rode him now instead of him riding it. He'd become the thing he'd once sworn he'd never be. The pups, Damon rasped, his voice barely human. Are they? Fine, Sarah managed. They're fine. The food was poisoned, but no one ate it. Damon's eyes, still more gold than brown, fixed on the tray. He moved to it, yanked off the cover, and the smell of poison intensified. Wolfsbane mixed with silver nitrate, a combination that would have killed the pups within minutes. His growl was low and continuous, the sound of a wolf on the edge of control. I'll find who sent them, he said, still staring at the poisoned food. I'll find everyone involved. And I'll... He stopped, probably realizing what he was about to say. What he was about to promise. More violence. More death. The very thing Sarah had run from 5 years ago. Damon. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through his rage. You need to shift back. You're scaring the pups. It was a lie. Most of the pups were too young to understand what they were seeing, and the older ones were hiding behind Sarah anyway. But it gave him something to focus on besides the kill. She watched him struggle, watched him fight to pull his wolf back under control. It took longer than it should have, 30 seconds, then a minute. His hands shook with the effort, his whole body trembling. Finally, his eyes faded back to brown. His claws retracted. His face returned to human. But the blood remained. "I'm sorry," he said, not looking at her. "I heard the commotion, and I couldn't let anything happen to." He stopped, swallowed hard. "I'll clean this up. Get the body removed. Have the room secured properly. You and the pups should move too." A small sound interrupted him. A whimper, high-pitched and plaintive. Luna had wiggled free from Sarah's arms and was toddling across the floor toward Damon. The tiny silver pup moved with single-minded determination, completely ignoring the blood, the body, the danger. She reached Damon and sat directly on his foot, looking up at him with wide, trusting eyes, and whimpered again. Damon froze, staring down at the pup like she was a grenade about to explode. "Luna, no," Sarah called softly. "Come back here, baby." But Luna ignored her. Instead, she pawed at Damon's leg, her small claws catching on his blood-soaked pants, and let out a tiny, imperious yip. "Pick me up," it clearly said. "Now." Sarah watched, barely breathing, as Damon slowly, so slowly, knelt down. His hands were still shaking, still stained with the assassin's blood. But he reached out gently, carefully, and scooped Luna into his palms. The pup was so small she fit easily in his cupped hands. She immediately curled into a ball, nuzzled her tiny nose against his thumb, and let out a contented sigh. Then she fell asleep. Just like that. In the hands of the Alpha King who was covered in blood, who'd just brutally killed someone in her doorway, who'd been hunting her caretaker for 5 years. Luna slept, completely at peace. Damon stared at the sleeping pup in his hands like she was the most precious, fragile thing in the world. His expression was naked, unguarded. Wonder and grief and desperate hope all tangled together. "She trusts you," Sarah said quietly. "She shouldn't." Damon's voice was rough. "Look at me. Look at what I just did. You're the male who kept us safe." Sarah surprised herself by saying it. "You're the male who heard danger and came running. Who protected her and her siblings without hesitation. By killing someone." "Yes." Sarah didn't look away from him. "By killing someone who was sent to murder children. Who would have succeeded if you hadn't been listening, hadn't been close enough to respond." Through the bond she'd forbidden him to push into, she felt his confusion. His disbelief that she could say these things after everything that had happened. "I saw the monster," Sarah continued, forcing herself to articulate the realization that had crystallized in her mind. "I saw what grief and manipulation turned you into. The rage, the loss of control, the violence. I saw it all." Damon's jaw tightened, and he looked away. "Then you know. But I also saw something else." She stood carefully, mindful of the wound on her shoulder, and took a step toward him. "I saw the male underneath. The one who's been standing guard outside my door every night. The one who sings along, off-key, when I sing the pups to sleep. The one who's been fighting to pull himself back from the edge." His eyes snapped to hers, shocked. "You knew I was there?" "Of course I knew." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "You're not as stealthy as you think. And your wolf's presence feels like sunshine, even when you're trying to hide it." Damon looked down at Luna, still sleeping peacefully in his bloody hands. "I don't know how to come back from what I became. I don't know if it's even possible." "Neither do I," Sarah admitted. "Maybe it's not. Maybe the male I mated died 5 years ago, and all that's left is broken pieces trying to pretend they're whole." His face crumpled at that, pain lancing through the bond. "But," Sarah continued, "Luna doesn't care about broken pieces. She doesn't care about the blood or the rage or the mistakes. She just knows you kept her safe. And maybe," she took another step closer. "Maybe that's where we start. Not trying to rebuild what was lost, but building something new from what remains." I don't deserve. None of us deserve what we've been given, Sarah interrupted. Not you, not me, and definitely not these pups. But we have it anyway. So the question isn't what we deserve. It's what we're going to do with it. Damon was quiet for a long moment, his attention fixed on the sleeping pup in his hands. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. I want to be better. Want to be someone worthy of this trust. He looked up at her. Someone worthy of your trust, someday, if that's even possible. Then start by helping me figure out who sent that assassin, Sarah said, turning back to survey her room. And by making sure it never happens again. Already done. Tobias appeared in the doorway, carefully avoiding looking at the body. I have 3 teams tracking every person who had access to the kitchens tonight. We'll have answers by morning. Good. Damon stood carefully, still cradling Luna. And Tobias? No one, and I mean no one, gets near this wing without my explicit approval. I don't care if it's the High Council themselves. If they're not on my personal clearance list, they don't get through that door. Understood, Alpha King. Damon looked down at Luna again, then reluctantly held her out to Sarah. You should take her. She needs to be with you. But when Sarah reached for the pup, Luna's eyes opened and she let out a sharp, unhappy yip. She burrowed deeper into Damon's hands, making her preference clear. She wants to stay with you, Sarah said, unable to hide her surprise. But she's your pup. You've been caring for her. She's her own pup, Sarah corrected. And right now, she's choosing you. I'm covered in blood. She doesn't care. And watching them together, the massive Alpha King and the tiny silver pup, both looking equally uncertain about this development, Sarah felt something crack in her chest. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But perhaps the beginning of understanding. Stay, she heard herself say. Until she's ready to sleep with the others. You can wash up in the bathroom, and there's a chair by the window. Just, stay. Damon looked at her like she'd offered him the world. Are you sure? No, Sarah said honestly. But she is, and right now, I'm trusting her judgment more than my own. So Damon stayed, cleaning the blood from his hands as best he could while keeping Luna secure, then settling into the chair Sarah had indicated. The tiny pup continued to sleep peacefully against his chest, her silver fur rising and falling with each breath. Sarah settled back with the other pups, letting them pile around her in their usual protective formation. The wound on her shoulder throbbed, but Dr. Winters would be here soon to treat it. For now, she just focused on breathing, on being present, on surviving another night. Through the bond, she felt Damon's presence, no longer pushing, no longer demanding, just there. Steady. Watchful. Guard-like. Tell me about them, Damon said quietly, his voice careful not to wake Luna. The pups. Their stories. Help me understand what they've survived. So Sarah did. In the quiet hours before dawn, while the assassin's body was removed and the guards doubled their patrols, she told him about each pup. About Marcus watching his family burn. About the twins being thrown into a river by their desperate father. About Luna's mother shoving her into Sarah's arms with her dying breath. She told him about Silver Creek, about the massacres, about 5 years of running and hiding and fighting to keep these children alive. And Damon listened, Luna sleeping peacefully against his heart, his eyes never leaving Sarah's face. When she finally ran out of words, exhausted and aching and more emotionally raw than she'd been since the cabin, Damon spoke. I'll make it right, he said. Not for you, I know I can't fix what I've broken between us. But for them. For these pups who've lost everything. I'll build a world where they're safe. Where Luna can grow up without fear, where Marcus and the twins and all of them can have the lives their parents wanted for them. That's a big promise, Sarah said. I know. He looked down at Luna, adjusting his hold so she was more comfortable. But I have to try. Because if I don't, if I let their sacrifices mean nothing, his voice broke. Then I really am the monster everyone thinks I've become. Sarah didn't argue with him. Didn't offer false comfort or empty reassurances. But she also didn't tell him to leave. And as the sun began to rise over the palace, painting the room in shades of gold and crimson, Sarah thought that maybe, just maybe, this was what hope looked like after it had been shattered and was trying to piece itself back together. Imperfect. Painful. Uncertain. But trying. Always trying. And sometimes, that had to be enough. Chapter 5. The Alpha Council chamber was older than the palace itself, carved from living stone deep in the mountain's heart. Torches lined the walls, their flames casting dancing shadows across the faces of 43 pack leaders who'd answered Damon's summons. The air was thick with power and tension. So many dominant wolves in one space made the atmosphere feel electric, dangerous. Sarah stood in the gallery above, looking down at the proceedings with the pups arranged around her. Luna, as always, was clutched in her arms. The other 9 sat at her feet, unusually quiet and still. Even at their young age, they could sense the gravity of what was happening. Below, in chains that had been blessed with silver to prevent shifting, First Counselor Marcus stood before the assembled alphas. Beside him, 15 other conspirators waited their turn, generals, council members, court officials who'd participated in the forgeries and massacres. And at the center of it all, Damon sat on the Alpha King's throne, his face carved from stone. "Let the evidence be presented," he commanded, his voice echoing through the chamber. Tobias stepped forward with his tablet and a stack of physical documents. "Alpha Council, I submit the following. First, authentication reports proving that execution orders bearing the Alpha King's seal were forged. The handwriting analysis is conclusive. These signatures, while similar, were written by different hands." He projected images onto the stone wall behind the throne, side-by-side comparisons of authentic signatures versus the forged ones. The differences were subtle but undeniable once pointed out. Second, financial records showing systematic embezzlement from the royal treasury, with funds redirected to private accounts controlled by the first counselor and his associates. Total amount, 47 million in gold. Gasps rippled through the chamber. That was enough wealth to fund a small kingdom for years. Third, toxicology reports confirming that supplements provided to the Alpha King contained wolfsbane extract in doses sufficient to impair judgment and memory. These supplements were personally administered by the first counselor for a period of 5 years. Fourth, Tobias's voice hardened. Testimony from surviving witnesses of the Silver Creek massacre. "We have sworn statements from 6 wolves who escaped, all describing the same scene, Royal Guard units executing surrendering civilians, burning homes with families still inside, and specifically targeting anyone who'd attended the royal mating ceremony 5 years ago." The chamber exploded with noise, angry growls, shocked exclamations, demands for explanation. Several alphas were on their feet, their eyes blazing gold. "Order." Damon's alpha command rolled through the space like thunder. "The accused will have their chance to speak." Marcus stepped forward, his chains clinking. Despite his position, despite the overwhelming evidence, he didn't look defeated. If anything, his eyes gleamed with malicious satisfaction. "Oh, I'll speak," he said, his voice carrying despite the lack of amplification. "I'll speak truths that will shake this council to its foundations." "Then speak," Damon said coldly. "Explain to these alphas why you forged my seal, drugged me, and orchestrated the murder of innocent packs." "Because it was necessary." Marcus's voice rang with conviction. "Because your father's weakness nearly destroyed us, and I swore I would never let that happen again. The low-born packs were a cancer, diluting our bloodlines, weakening our strength, spreading soft-hearted ideals about equality and mercy. I did what needed to be done to preserve pure wolf heritage." "You committed genocide," growled Alpha Meredith of the Coastal Reach, one of the few female pack leaders in attendance. "You executed children." "I eliminated inferior bloodlines before they could further corrupt us," Marcus corrected, unrepentant. "And I would do it again." In fact, his smile was vicious. "I'm not done yet." He turned to look directly up at the gallery where Sarah stood. You want to know the real conspiracy? It's not what I did. It's what she is. He pointed at Sarah with his chained hands. That creature you're all so ready to embrace as Luna, she's not Damon's true mate. She never was. The chamber went silent. That's absurd, Damon said, but something flickered in his expression. The mate bond between us is undeniable. Is it? Marcus's voice turned silky. Or is it dark magic? A trick orchestrated by rogue witches to place a low-born Omega on the throne and destroy the kingdom from within? Think about it, my king. What true mate disappears for 5 years without a trace? What real bond goes cold and stays cold unless deliberately hidden by unnatural means? The bond was suppressed because of your drugging, Tobias interjected. The medical evidence explains nothing about why she could block it so completely. Why she could sever it at will while he couldn't. Marcus was warming to his theme now, playing to the assembled alphas. I submit that Sarah of Silver Creek is not a true mate but an imposter, protected by dark magic, sent to weaken the Alpha King and destroy everything we've built. This is ridiculous, Sarah called down from the gallery, her voice sharp. You're grasping at straws because you've been caught. Then prove it, Marcus challenged. If you're truly his fated mate, if the moon goddess herself blessed your union, then prove it the old way. Submit to the trial of truth. The chamber erupted again. Sarah heard the words repeated, whispered, argued. Trial of truth. The ancient rites. Testing by the goddess herself. No, Damon said immediately, standing from his throne. Absolutely not. The trials haven't been invoked in over a century. Because alphas became too soft to honor the old ways, Marcus interrupted. But the law is clear. Any wolf accused of deception in matters of mating may demand the trial of truth. If Sarah is your true mate, the moon goddess will protect her through the 3 challenges. If not, his smile was cruel. She'll die, and those mongrel pups she's been harboring will be executed as tainted by her deception. You can't, Sarah started, but Alpha Garrett of the Mountain Ridge stood. He can, actually, Garrett said, his voice grave. The law is ancient but never revoked. Any accused party can invoke the trial of truth. And any pack leader can second the demand. I second it, called Alpha Thorn of the Western Valleys. As do I, added Alpha Kendrick of the Northern Frost. Sarah's heart sank as more voices joined in. Not all the alphas, many looked uncomfortable, even horrified. But enough. More than enough to make the trial mandatory under ancient law. This is madness, Damon snarled, his wolf rising to the surface. She's barely recovered from silver poisoning. Her wolf is still damaged. Putting her through the trials in this condition is a death sentence. Then perhaps she should have thought of that before using dark magic to deceive an Alpha King, Marcus said smoothly. But if she's innocent, if the bond is true, the moon goddess will see her through. Unless, he tilted his head mockingly. You don't have faith in the goddess's judgment? It was a trap, beautifully laid. If Damon refused the trial, he'd be denying the moon goddess's authority, positioning himself against ancient tradition and religious law. The conservative alphas would turn on him immediately. But if Sarah went through with it in her current condition. Through the bond, Sarah felt Damon's anguish, his desperate search for a way out. She felt his wolf raging against the constraints of law and tradition that prevented him from simply tearing Marcus apart and being done with it. And she made her decision. I accept, she called down, her voice steady despite her terror. I'll submit to the trial of truth. Sarah, no, Damon started. I accept, she repeated, louder. Let the moon goddess judge whether my bond to Damon Blackthorn is true or false. Let her judge whether I'm worthy to stand as Luna. And let her judge, she stared directly at Marcus. Who the real deceiver in this chamber is. Marcus's smile widened. So be it. The trial will commence at moonrise. The preparation chamber was small and cold. Sarah sat on a stone bench while Dr. Winters examined her for the third time, her face growing more grave with each test. "Your wolf is still severely compromised," the doctor said quietly. "The silver damage hasn't fully healed. If you try to shift during the trials, there's a significant chance your wolf could." She stopped, unable to finish the sentence. "Could die," Sarah finished for her. "Taking me with her?" "Yes." Sarah nodded, expecting this. She looked down at Luna, who sat in her lap as always, and at the other 9 pups arranged around her feet. They'd been allowed to come to the preparation chamber, a small mercy from Damon. "Will you take care of them?" she asked Dr. Winters. "If I don't, if the trials don't." The doctor's voice was fierce. "Don't you dare give up before you've even begun. Those pups need you. The kingdom needs you. And whether you believe it or not, Damon needs you. Damon needs a Luna who isn't broken. He needs his Luna. His true mate. Which is what you're about to prove to every wolf in this kingdom." Dr. Winters gripped her shoulder. "The moon goddess doesn't make mistakes with mate bonds. If you and Damon are fated, she'll see you through this." Sarah wanted to believe that. Wanted to have faith in divine protection and destined love. But she'd spent 5 years watching innocent wolves die despite their prayers and pleas. She'd seen pups orphaned and packs destroyed and good wolves slaughtered. Where had the moon goddess been then? The door opened, and Damon entered. He looked haggard, his eyes haunted. "Everyone out," he commanded. "I need a moment with my mate." Dr. Winters hesitated, then nodded and ushered the pups toward the door. They went reluctantly, Luna especially vocal in her protests, but eventually the chamber was empty except for Sarah and Damon. "Don't do this," Damon said without preamble. "Refuse the trial. I'll find another way." "There is no other way." Sarah stood to face him. "Marcus backed you into a legal corner. If I refuse, I'm admitting guilt. You'll lose all political support, and the pups will still be in danger. I don't care about political support. I care about you dying in some barbaric ritual. Then you should have cared 5 years ago." The words exploded out of her, 5 years of pain and anger and grief finally finding voice. "You should have cared when I tried to tell you innocent wolves were dying. You should have cared when I disappeared. You should have cared before we got to this point." Damon flinched like she'd struck him. "You're right. About all of it. I failed you in every way that mattered. But Sarah, please, let me fail you by keeping you alive. Let me be the villain who defies ancient law and tradition. Let me lose the crown and the kingdom if that's what it takes. Just don't walk into that arena." "And what about the pups?" Sarah demanded. "Marcus made it clear, if I'm judged false, they die too. So even if I refuse, even if we run, they're still under death sentence. Is that the world you want to build for them? One where they're always running, always in danger, because their caretaker was too afraid to face judgment? Better running and alive than proven true and dead. You don't know I'll die." Sarah moved closer to him, close enough to feel his heat, smell his scent. Pine and mountain air and something uniquely him. "You don't know what the moon goddess will do. I know your wolf is damaged. I know you're still weak from the poisoning. I know," his voice broke. "I know I just got you back, and I can't lose you again. I can't." Through the bond, the one she'd been carefully keeping at arm's length, Sarah felt the depth of his terror. It wasn't about politics or kingdoms or even redemption. It was raw, primal fear, a mate terrified of losing his other half. "Then have faith," she said softly. "In me. In the bond between us. In the moon goddess who supposedly brought us together." She reached up, touching his face with trembling fingers. "I'm going into that arena, Damon. Not because I want to die, but because I want to live. Really live, not just survive. And I can't do that with this shadow hanging over us." Damon caught her hand, pressed his face into her palm. If something happens to you, then you'll take care of the pups. You'll be the alpha king they deserve, not the one Marcus tried to create. You'll build the world we should have built together. She paused. Promise me. I promise. The words came out choked. But Sarah. And promise me something else. She waited until he looked at her. Promise you won't interfere. No matter what happens in that arena, no matter how bad it looks, you won't step in. Because if you do, we both die, and the pups have no one. Sarah. Promise me, Damon. On the mate bond. On your alpha oath. She saw him struggling, saw the war between his instincts and his reason. Finally, agonizingly, he nodded. I promise. On the mate bond and my alpha oath, I won't interfere in the trials, no matter what. The words settled over them like chains, binding and absolute. Sarah kissed him then, surprising them both. It was brief, chaste, nothing like the passionate kisses they'd shared 5 years ago. But it was real, and it was goodbye, just in case. Win, Damon whispered against her lips. Whatever it takes, whoever you have to become, win. I will, Sarah said. She just hoped it was a promise she could keep. The arena had been prepared according to ancient specifications, a circular pit 50 feet in diameter, surrounded by stone benches where the Alpha Council and court nobles sat in judgment. The moon hung full and bright overhead, its light painting everything silver. Sarah stood at the center of the pit, wearing a simple white shift that left her arms and legs bare. Around her neck hung a pendant depicting the moon goddess, the only adornment allowed for the trials. Marcus stood opposite her, his chains removed for the ceremony. Beside him, looking viciously pleased, was Lady Celeste. The first trial, announced Elder Miriam, one of the oldest wolves in the kingdom and the designated judge, is the trial of silver fire. The accused must walk through flames that have been blessed with silver essence. These flames will burn away all lies, all deception, all false magic. If the accused is truly the Alpha King's fated mate, blessed by the moon goddess herself, the flames will leave her unmarked. If not, she didn't need to finish. Everyone knew what silver fire did to wolves. It burned from the inside out, targeting the wolf first, then the human host. A path of flames roared to life across the arena floor. 20 feet of silver blue fire that made every wolf present recoil instinctively. You may begin, Elder Miriam said. Sarah took a deep breath and stepped toward the flames. Heat hit her like a wall, making her skin prickle and her damaged wolf whimper in the back of her mind. Silver. Her body remembered silver, remembered the agony of poisoning, remembered weeks of barely contained screaming. But she'd survived that. She could survive this. She stepped into the fire. Pain exploded through her body, white-hot and all-consuming. It felt like being skinned alive, like every nerve ending was being touched with red-hot iron. Her wolf tried to retreat, tried to hide, but there was nowhere to go. The silver in the flames found her, targeted her, burned through the fragile shield she'd built. Sarah screamed. Couldn't help it. The sound tore from her throat, raw and animal. Through watering eyes, she saw the shocked faces of the watching alphas, saw Damon half risen from his seat, his face a mask of anguish. But he'd promised. He couldn't interfere. So Sarah walked. One step, then another, then another. Her skin blistered and blackened. The scent of burning flesh filled the air. Her vision tunneled, darkness creeping in at the edges. But she walked. And somewhere in the agony, something shifted. Her wolf, damaged and weak as she was, pushed forward instead of retreating. Wrapped herself around Sarah's consciousness like a shield, taking the worst of the burning onto herself. We are mate, her wolf seemed to say. We are true. Fire cannot unmake what the moon goddess has blessed. The last step came almost as a surprise. Sarah stumbled out of the flames and collapsed on the stone, gasping and shaking. Her skin was angry red, blistered in places, but healing. Already healing, faster than it should, faster than her damaged wolf should be capable of. She survives, Elder Miriam announced, and Sarah heard shock in her voice. The first trial is past. Through blurred vision, Sarah saw Marcus's face. For the first time, he looked uncertain. Good. They gave her 30 minutes to recover before the second trial. Dr. Winters appeared with salves and bandages, working frantically to help the healing process along. I can't believe you survived that, the doctor muttered. Your wolf should have shut down completely. Instead she stopped, staring at Sarah's healing skin. She got stronger. I don't understand how, but she's actually stronger than she was before the trial. Sarah didn't understand it either. But she could feel it, her wolf, stirring with more strength than she'd had since the poisoning. Still damaged, still compromised, but fighting back now instead of cowering. Maybe the moon goddess was listening after all. The second trial, Elder Miriam called, and Sarah forced herself to stand. The mirror of truth. The accused must face her deepest shames, her darkest secrets, revealed for all to see. If the bond is true, if her heart is pure in its devotion, the mirror will show that truth as well. A massive silver mirror was wheeled into the center of the arena, its surface rippling like water. Sarah approached it slowly, her heart hammering. She knew her secrets. Knew the shame she carried. The court was about to know them too. She looked into the mirror, and images began to form. Sarah, huddled in a cave with 3 whimpering pups, her stomach so empty it had stopped hurting 3 days ago. A river ran nearby, she could hear it, could smell the water. Easy to walk into. Easy to let the current take her away from the endless hunger, the constant fear, the impossible weight of keeping these children alive. I should just end it, her reflection whispered. It would be kinder than watching them slowly starve. Then failing them the way I've failed everyone else. The court gasped. Sarah wanted to look away but couldn't. The mirror held her transfixed as more images surfaced. Sarah, holding a silver knife to her own throat after the Riverside massacre, 12 new orphans depending on her, and her resources completely exhausted. I can't do this anymore, she sobbed. I can't save them all. I can't. Sarah, standing at the edge of a neutral territory border with the pups, freedom just a mile away. All she had to do was cross, leave them with the wolves on the other side, wash her hands of the responsibility. They'll be safer without me, she told herself. I'm just leading the hunters to them. If I leave, they'll have a chance. Image after image of weakness, of desperation, of moments when she'd nearly given up. Every time she'd considered abandoning the pups, every dark thought, every moment of cowardice, all of it displayed for the assembled alphas to judge. Sarah sank to her knees, shame crushing her. I'm sorry, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry. I tried to be strong, tried to be what they needed, but I wasn't, I couldn't. A small sound made her look up. Luna had broken free from the guards. The tiny silver pup was running full tilt across the arena floor, her little legs pumping frantically. She reached Sarah and launched herself into her lap, nuzzling her face, licking away her tears with desperate affection. Luna, no, Sarah tried to push her away gently. You shouldn't, I don't deserve. But Luna wasn't alone. The other pups followed. Marcus with his black paws, the twins Ash and Ember, all 9 of them swarming Sarah, climbing on her, covering her with their small bodies in a protective pile. They didn't care about the shameful images. Didn't care about the moments of weakness. They just knew she was hurting, and they loved her. The mirror shows shame, Elder Miriam said slowly, examining the still rippling surface. But it also shows truth. Every dark thought was followed by action, she stayed. She fought. She chose them over escape, over peace, over her own life. Again and again, she chose them. The mirror's surface changed, showing new images now. Sarah singing lullabies to hungry pups. Sarah standing between them and danger, weaponless but defiant. Sarah bleeding and exhausted, still moving forward because they needed her to. "This is not the image of a false mate," Elder Miriam declared. "This is a Luna. True to her bond, true to her duty, true even in her darkest moments." The second trial is past. Sarah clung to the pups, crying into their soft fur, while the assembled court watched in silence. Through the bond, she felt Damon's love flooding toward her, fierce and unconditional and so strong it hurt. She'd passed 2 trials. 1 more to go. They tried to take the pups away for the 3rd trial, but Luna refused to leave Sarah's side, her tiny growl surprisingly fierce. Finally, Elder Miriam relented, allowing the pups to remain in a protected viewing area close enough for Sarah to see. "The 3rd trial," the elder announced, "is the trial of combat. The accused must survive 1 minute in the pit against a champion chosen by her accuser. If she survives, her bond is proven true. If she falls, again, no need to finish." A gate on the opposite side of the arena opened, and Sarah's heart sank. Cade was massive. Easily 7 feet tall, built like a mountain, with scars crisscrossing his arms and chest. He was famous in the fighting circuits, notorious for never showing mercy, never leaving an opponent alive. And Sarah, even with her wolf stirring stronger than before, was still weak. Still recovering. Still so far from full strength that this fight was essentially an execution. Marcus's smile was triumphant. He thought he'd won. "Rules," Elder Miriam said. "Survival for 1 minute counts as victory for the accused. Any killing blow ends the trial immediately. And," she looked directly at Damon, "any interference from anyone outside the pit results in immediate execution for both the accused and the interferer. This is sacred combat, judged by the moon goddess herself. Outside intervention is blasphemy." Damon's hands gripped his throne's armrests so hard the stone cracked. Through the bond, Sarah felt his wolf raging against the promise she'd forced him to make. "Don't," she sent through their connection. "No matter what. Don't." Cade cracked his knuckles, grinning. "Nothing personal, Omega. Just business. Begin." Elder Miriam called. Cade moved fast, faster than something his size should be able to move. His first blow caught Sarah in the ribs, and she heard bones crack. She went flying, hitting the arena wall hard enough to see stars. 30 seconds. She tried to dodge the second blow, but her damaged wolf couldn't respond fast enough. Cade's fist connected with her face, snapping her head back. Blood filled her mouth. 20 seconds. "Stay down," Cade advised, not unkindly. "Make it quick." But Sarah struggled to her feet, spitting blood. The pups were watching. Luna was watching. She wouldn't die on her knees. 15 seconds. Cade sighed and grabbed her throat, lifting her off the ground. His grip was iron, crushing. Sarah's vision started to go dark, her lungs burning for air. Through the darkening haze, she saw Damon standing, saw him preparing to leap into the pit despite his promise, despite knowing it would kill them both. "No." The word ripped through the bond with every ounce of force she possessed. And something inside her shattered. Not broke, shattered. Like a chrysalis splitting open. Like chains falling away. Her wolf surged forward, but this time, she wasn't brown. Wasn't damaged. She blazed silver, pure, brilliant silver that lit up the entire arena like a star. The transformation took seconds. Sarah's wolf was larger than she'd ever been, her fur shimmering like moonlight, her eyes glowing with otherworldly power. She broke Cade's grip as easily as snapping a twig, landed on 4 paws, and lunged. Cade tried to shift, tried to defend himself. But he was facing something beyond a normal wolf. Something touched by the divine. Sarah's silver wolf took him down in 3 moves, her jaws closing around his throat, not killing, but dominating. Forcing submission. Cade went limp, showing his throat in surrender. And then Sarah heard it, everyone heard it. A voice like wind through trees, like moonlight given sound. The true Luna rises. The moon goddess herself, speaking through the arena, her presence undeniable. Sarah of Silver Creek is my blessed daughter. Her bond to Damon Blackthorn is true and fated. Any who deny this deny me. Sarah's wolf released Cade and turned to face the assembled court. Every wolf present, every single one, dropped to their knees, including the alphas. Including Elder Miriam. Even Marcus sank down, his face ashen with terror. Only Damon remained standing, his eyes locked on Sarah's transformed wolf with wonder and awe and soul-deep recognition. His true mate. His Luna. Silver-blessed and goddess-touched. Finally proven beyond any doubt. Sarah shifted back to human form, her body unmarked despite the beating, her strength fully restored. She stood in the center of the arena, wearing nothing but moonlight and vindication. The third trial is past, Elder Miriam said, her voice shaking. All 3 trials are past. Sarah of Silver Creek is proven true by the moon goddess herself. She turned to Marcus, who still knelt in the dirt. And you, first counselor Marcus, stand condemned by the goddess you claimed to invoke. Your accusations were false. Your conspiracy is exposed. Your judgment is mine to deliver, Damon said, descending into the arena. He approached Marcus slowly, deliberately. I swore an alpha oath to personally execute every conspirator. On my authority, on my bond, on my crown, I will fulfill that oath. He shifted partially, just his claws, just his eyes going gold. It was enough. For the crime of conspiracy, for the crime of genocide, for the crime of attempting to harm my true mate. His claws flashed once, precise and final. Justice is served. Marcus fell, and the arena was silent. Sarah walked to Damon on shaking legs, and he caught her, pulling her against his chest. Through the bond, no longer suppressed, no longer damaged, blazing strong and true, they felt each other completely for the first time in 5 years. My Luna, Damon whispered into her hair. My true, goddess-blessed Luna. My mate, Sarah answered, and felt the words settle into her bones like coming home. A small yip made them look down. Luna had escaped the viewing area again and was sitting at their feet, her silver fur matching Sarah's transformed wolf perfectly. The other pups followed, as always, creating a circle of orphan children around their Luna and their king. The moon goddess has spoken, Elder Miriam announced to the assembled court. All hail the true Luna. All hail. The court echoed, and the sound rolled through the arena like thunder. Sarah stood in the center of it all, scarred, exhausted, but finally free. The trials were over. The truth was proven. And the real work of rebuilding could begin. Chapter 6. The execution platform had been erected in the palace's central square, where all major proclamations and judgments were traditionally carried out. Dawn light painted the stones gold and red as wolves from across the kingdom gathered to witness justice, or vengeance, depending on who you asked. Sarah stood on the royal balcony with the pups arranged around her, Luna as always in her arms. The tiny silver pup had been fussy all morning, as if sensing the darkness of what was about to happen. The other pups were unusually quiet, their young faces solemn. Below, 5 wolves knelt on the platform in silver chains. First Counselor Marcus in the center, flanked by General Thorne, Colonel Reeves, and 2 council members who'd been instrumental in forging the execution orders. 15 other conspirators had already been tried and sentenced to various punishments. Exile, imprisonment, loss of rank. But these five had been at the heart of it all. These 5 had ordered the massacres. Damon stood beside the platform, his face carved from stone, wearing the formal regalia of the Alpha King. The executioner's blade, blessed silver, as tradition demanded, rested in his hands. He'd insisted on wielding it himself, honoring the oath he'd sworn to Sarah. Elder Miriam stepped forward to read the charges. Her voice carried across the silent square, listing atrocity after atrocity. The forged orders. The drugging. The systematic elimination of entire packs. The orphan children. The stolen futures. By the time she finished, even wolves who'd initially sympathized with the purity of bloodlines argument looked sick. The accused had been found guilty by Alpha Council and condemned by the moon goddess herself, Elder Miriam concluded. Sentenced to be carried out by the Alpha King's hand, as sworn by sacred oath. Does any wolf here contest this judgment? Silence. Then let justice be served. Damon approached the first conspirator, Colonel Reeves, who'd personally led the Silver Creek massacre. The wolf didn't beg or plead. Just stared ahead with empty eyes, already resigned to death. For the crime of genocide, Damon said, his voice carrying across the square, for the murder of innocents, for the betrayal of everything our kingdom should stand for, I deliver justice. The blade fell. Quick. Clean. Final. One by one, Damon executed them. General Thorne, who'd coordinated the logistics. The two council members who'd provided funding and political cover. Each execution was pronounced with the same words, each stroke of the blade delivered with the same grim efficiency. Through the bond, Sarah felt Damon's anguish. Felt each death like a weight settling onto his shoulders. This wasn't bloodlust or revenge, it was duty, and it was destroying him piece by piece. But he'd sworn an oath. And Damon Blackthorne kept his promises. Finally, only Marcus remained. The former first counselor looked up at Damon with something that might have been satisfaction. Go ahead, he said, his voice surprisingly steady. Make me a martyr. Give the purebloods a rallying point. See how well that works out for you. You're no martyr, Damon said coldly. You're a genocidal fanatic who manipulated and drugged his king to serve your own twisted agenda. History will remember you as a traitor, nothing more. Will it? Marcus smiled, and there was something in that smile that made Sarah's blood run cold. Or will history remember me as the one who tried to save the kingdom from its greatest mistake? Enough. Damon raised the blade. For the crimes of... She's pregnant, Marcus interrupted, his voice ringing across the square. Damon froze. What? Celeste. My dear niece. Marcus's smile widened, vicious and triumphant even facing death. She's carrying your child. The true heir to the throne. Not the mongrel pups your Omega has collected, but a pure-blooded royal baby. Your son. The square erupted in shocked murmurs. On the balcony, Sarah felt the world tilt sideways. That's a lie, Damon said, but uncertainty flickered across his face. I would never. Wouldn't you? Marcus laughed, the sound harsh and mocking. There was that celebration after the winter campaign. You drank rather heavily that night. Retired to your chambers early. Don't remember much after that, do you? Sarah watched the color drain from Damon's face. Through the bond, she felt his confusion, his desperate attempt to remember that night, coming up against nothing but fog. More drugging. It had to be. But the damage was done. She'll come forward with proof, Marcus continued, enjoying every word. Medical confirmation, witnesses to your encounter, everything necessary to legitimize the child's claim. And according to royal law, the firstborn child, legitimate or not, has rights to the throne. So congratulations, my king. Even in death, I win. You're lying, Damon snarled, but his voice shook. Am I? Marcus's eyes found Sarah on the balcony. Ask your precious Luna. Ask her if she's willing to bet those pups' futures on your faulty memory. Because if Celeste's child is recognized, those orphans become politically irrelevant. Burdens. Liabilities. How long do you think they'll survive in a court that already hates them? Enough. Damon's blade flashed, ending Marcus's laughter mid-breath. But the poison had already spread. Celeste made her announcement 3 hours later, in the throne room, before the assembled court. She wore flowing robes that artfully concealed her midsection, one hand resting on her stomach in a gesture of protective maternity. "I apologize for the timing," she said, her voice pitched to sound fragile and brave. "I know emotions are running high after the executions. But I can no longer hide the truth. I'm carrying the Alpha King's child, his heir." The court exploded with noise. Sarah stood beside Damon's throne, her face a mask of ice, while inside she was screaming. "This is absurd," Tobias interjected, stepping forward. "Lady Celeste, you're accusing the Alpha King of—" "I'm not accusing anyone of anything," Celeste interrupted smoothly. "It was consensual, if regrettable. A moment of weakness after the winter campaign celebration, when the Alpha King was not entirely himself." She looked at Damon with what she probably thought was sympathy. "I don't blame you for not remembering. You were very intoxicated. But I have medical confirmation from my private physician, and several servants witnessed you entering my chambers that night." "Produce this physician," Damon demanded, his voice like gravel. "Now." "I will, of course. But Alpha King, surely you don't doubt me? We've known each other for years. I've been managing your household, standing by your side, supporting you through your darkest times. Would I lie about something so important?" "Yes," Sarah said, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. "You absolutely would." Celeste turned to her, and for just a moment, Sarah saw pure malice in her eyes before the mask of hurt innocence slipped back into place. "I understand you're upset, Sarah. But please don't take your jealousy out on an innocent child. This baby didn't ask to be conceived during your absence. And according to royal law, as the Alpha King's firstborn." "Stop." Damon stood from his throne, his Alpha command rolling across the chamber. "This discussion is over until we have proof. Real proof, not convenient claims and suspect witnesses. You will submit to examination by the royal physician, Dr. Winters, not your private doctor. And we will investigate every aspect of this supposed conception. If you're lying—" "I'm not lying." Celeste's hand moved to her stomach again. "I'm carrying your son, Damon. Our son. And no amount of investigation will change that truth." She swept from the throne room, leaving chaos in her wake. Sarah made it back to the East Wing before the numbness cracked. The pups were with their caretakers, giving her rare solitude. She stood in the center of her sitting room, staring at nothing, feeling everything. If Celeste's claim was true, if she really was carrying Damon's child, the mate bond would survive. Bonds didn't break just because a male sired children outside them. It happened sometimes, especially in arranged political matings before true mates found each other. But Sarah's position as Luna would be compromised. A firstborn child, even one conceived before a true mating was completed, had legitimate claims. The court would be divided. Factions would form around the baby versus the Luna. The pups would be caught in the middle, orphans with no blood claim to the throne, versus a pure-blooded royal heir. They'd be expendable. Worse than expendable. They'd be seen as competition, threats to the legitimate heir. Through the bond, Sarah felt Damon approaching. She immediately shut it down, slamming walls into place, blocking him out as completely as she had during the 5 years of running. She couldn't deal with his anguish right now. Couldn't handle his confusion or his apologies or his desperate attempts to remember something that might not have even happened. The door opened. "Sarah, please. Don't." She held up a hand, still not looking at him. "Don't apologize. Don't explain. Don't make promises you might not be able to keep. I didn't touch her. I swear on the mate bond, on everything I am, I would never." "You don't remember." Sarah finally turned to face him, and something in her expression made him flinch. "You have gaps in your memory from the drugging. You can't swear to something you don't remember. My wolf would know. Would remember. And he's telling me nothing happened." "Wolves can be fooled too. Especially drugged wolves." Sarah wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold. I need to think. I need to figure out what's best for the pups. The pups stay here. With us. No matter what Celeste claims. Do they? Sarah laughed, bitter and broken. You're the Alpha King. You have to think about political stability, about succession, about what's best for the kingdom. 10 orphaned pups with no blood claim versus 1 pure-blooded royal heir? That's not a hard calculation for the court to make. I don't care what the court thinks. I care about. You have to care. The words exploded out of her. You're not just my mate, you're the Alpha King. You can't make decisions based solely on what you want. That's what got us into this mess in the first place, you, making choices without thinking about the consequences, listening to the wrong people, letting your emotions cloud your judgment. The words hung between them, brutal and true. So what are you saying? Damon asked quietly. That you're leaving? Taking the pups and running again? I'm saying I need to think about what's best for them. And maybe, her voice cracked. Maybe what's best is for them to have stability, safety, a home where they're not caught in political warfare. Even if that home isn't with me. Sarah. Please go. She turned away from him, unable to bear the look on his face. Just, please go. He left, and Sarah sank to the floor, finally allowing herself to break. Over the next 3 days, the palace became a war zone of whispers and factions. Nobles aligned themselves with either the Luna or the Mother of the Air. Servants gossiped about Damon's drunken night with Celeste. Courtiers speculated about what would happen to the orphan pups. And through it all, Sarah maintained icy distance from Damon, focusing entirely on the pups. Except the pups were adapting to palace life in ways that broke her heart. Marcus had befriended the kitchen staff and was helping them make bread, his tiny hands covered in flour, his laugh bright and joyful. The twins had discovered the palace library and spent hours looking at picture books. The others were thriving with regular meals, warm beds, safety they'd never known. And Luna. Luna had started calling Damon Papa. It happened first during a chance encounter in the hallway. Damon had knelt to greet her, and Luna had toddled over, placed her small hands on his knees, and said clear as day, Papa. Sarah had watched from the doorway, her heart cracking clean through. Damon's face had crumpled with joy and pain, and he'd carefully picked Luna up, holding her like she was made of glass. Hey, little moonbeam, he'd whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Luna had just nuzzled into his chest and repeated, Papa, with absolute contentment. Now she said it constantly. Papa when she saw him in the morning. Papa when he checked on her at night. Papa when she was scared or hurt or happy. And every time, Sarah died a little more inside. Because she was planning to leave. Was researching neutral territories where she could take the pups, where they'd be safe from political machinations and court intrigue. She'd found a place, a small pack in the mountains that had offered sanctuary, that had space for orphans and a community that would welcome them. She could give them safety there. Stability. A home away from all this chaos. But she couldn't give them Damon. Couldn't give Luna her Papa, or the other pups the Alpha King who'd shown them kindness and protection. She was going to have to choose, their safety or their happiness. And she didn't know which was more important. Tobias found the evidence on the 4th day. He burst into Damon's office, tablet in hand, his expression caught between fury and triumph. I have proof. Absolute, undeniable proof that Celeste is lying. Damon looked up from the reports he'd been staring at without reading. Show me. Tobias pulled up medical records. First, I had our tech team pull surveillance from the night of the winter celebration. Every hallway, every entrance, every camera in the palace. There's no footage of you entering Celeste's chambers. None. You went straight from the Great Hall to your private quarters, and you didn't leave until morning. She could claim the cameras were disabled. Which is why I also interviewed every servant on duty that night. 6 different wolves confirmed seeing you in your quarters, alone, passed out drunk. Not one saw you anywhere near Celeste's wing. Hope flickered in Damon's chest, tentative and afraid to fully form. And the pregnancy? Doesn't exist. Tobias pulled up more images. I hired a private investigator, one with connections to the magical community. They detected traces of glamour magic on Celeste, specifically around her midsection. She's been using illusion spells to fake the appearance of pregnancy. He brought up photos taken with special equipment that could see through magical disguises. In them, Celeste's stomach was completely flat. There is no baby, Tobias said firmly. Never was. This was a desperate ploy by Marcus to secure his family's position even after his death. Celeste's been playing for time, probably hoping to either trick you into an actual mating or find some other way to produce an heir and claim it was yours. The relief was so intense Damon nearly collapsed. Are you certain? Absolutely certain. I have 3 independent magical investigators confirming the glamour. I have medical experts ready to examine her. I have testimonies, footage, documentation, everything we need to expose her publicly. Then we do it now. Damon stood, energy flooding back into his limbs. Call an emergency court session. Get everyone there, every noble, every pack leader, everyone who witnessed her announcement. And get Sarah. She needs to see this. The throne room was packed within the hour. Sarah stood in her usual position beside the throne, her face carefully blank. She'd brought Luna with her. The pup had refused to be left behind, had thrown such a fit that Sarah had finally given in. Now Luna squirmed in her arms, reaching toward Damon. Papa. Papa. Soon, Moonbeam, Damon murmured, his heart breaking at the look on Sarah's face. Soon. Celeste entered with her usual entourage, still wearing flowing robes, still playing the part of expectant mother. She smiled serenely at the assembled court, one hand resting on her padded stomach. Lady Celeste, Damon said, his voice formal and cold. Thank you for joining us on such short notice. Of course, Alpha King. I'm always happy to support you. Her eyes flicked to Sarah with barely concealed triumph. I've called this session to address certain inconsistencies in your claim of pregnancy with my child. Celeste's smile faltered slightly. Inconsistencies? Yes. For instance, the lack of any surveillance footage showing me entering your chambers on the night in question. Or the testimony of 6 servants who confirm I never left my own quarters. Damon gestured to Tobias, who began projecting evidence on the chamber walls. Cameras can be wrong. Servants can be mistaken, Celeste started. And magical glamours can be detected, Damon interrupted. Which is why I brought in specialists. Tobias? 3 robed figures entered the chamber, magical investigators, their credentials impeccable and recognized by all major packs. They approached Celeste with devices that hummed with arcane energy. This is ridiculous, Celeste protested. You would subject me to invasive magical examination based on paranoid suspicions? I would subject a wolf making false claims about carrying my child to whatever examination necessary to determine the truth, Damon corrected. Unless you have something to hide? Celeste looked around the chamber, seeking support. But the nobles who'd aligned with her were already backing away, sensing the shift in political winds. I refuse, she said finally. I won't be humiliated. Then I'll prove it myself. One of the investigators raised a hand, and purple light flooded across Celeste's form. The glamour shattered like glass. The padding, cleverly hidden, expertly applied, tumbled to the floor. And Celeste stood revealed, her stomach completely flat, her deception exposed for all to see. The throne room erupted in shock and outrage. Lies, someone shouted. She's been lying this whole time. The Luna is innocent. Celeste should be executed for such deception. But Celeste wasn't listening to the crowd. Her eyes were locked on Sarah with pure, undiluted hatred. And her hand was moving to a hidden pocket in her robes, fingers closing around something that gleamed silver in the light. "If I can't have him," she snarled, "then neither can you." The blade flashed as she lunged toward Sarah. Time seemed to slow. Sarah tried to move, to dodge, but Luna was in her arms, and she couldn't risk dropping the pup. Damon moved faster than thought, faster than breath. He threw himself between Sarah and the blade, and silver bit deep into his chest, precisely where his heart beat. He fell. "Damon!" Sarah's scream tore through the chamber. She shoved Luna into Tobias's arms and dropped to her knees beside her mate. Blood, so much blood, spread across his chest, black with silver poisoning. No, no, no. The mate bond blazed to life, and through it, Sarah felt Damon's life flickering like a candle in a storm. Felt his wolf retreating, unable to heal from a silver blade through the heart. Felt him dying. "No." The word came out as a growl. "You don't get to leave me. Not like this. Not ever." Her wolf surged forward, not brown like it had been, not even the silver it had transformed into during the trial. This was something else entirely, something that blazed white gold like sunlight. Divine. Sarah's hands pressed to Damon's chest, and power flowed through her. Healing power that no normal wolf possessed. It burned through the silver poison, knitting torn tissue, restarting his failing heart. The mate bond amplified it, channeling the moon goddess's blessing through their connection. Around them, the assembled court watched in awed silence as the Luna, the true, goddess-blessed Luna, saved her mate's life with power that shouldn't exist. When Sarah finally pulled back, gasping and exhausted, Damon's eyes fluttered open. "Sarah," he breathed. "You idiot," she sobbed, checking him for injuries and finding only healed skin where the wound had been. "You absolute idiot," taking a silver blade to the chest. "For you," he said, his hand coming up to cup her face. "Always for you." "The bond," Elder Miriam whispered from somewhere in the crowd. "Look at the bond." Above them, visible to everyone in the chamber, the mate bond gleamed. Golden and brilliant and absolutely undeniable. It connected Sarah and Damon like a living thing, pulsing with their shared heartbeats, blazing with divine blessing. No one could doubt it now. No one could question it. They were true mates, blessed by the moon goddess herself. "Guards," Damon said, sitting up with Sarah's help. "Take Lady Celeste into custody. She will face trial for attempted murder of the Luna." Celeste laughed, wild and broken as guards seized her arms. "You think this is over? My family won't forget this. The purebloods won't forget. You've made enemies, boy king. Powerful enemies who'll never accept her. Then they can join you in exile," Damon interrupted. "Your family's titles are stripped. Your lands confiscated. You and any family member who supported this conspiracy will be banished from the kingdom by sunset tomorrow." He stood, pulling Sarah up with him. "And anyone else who has a problem with my Luna can speak now or accept her as law." Silence. Even the wolves who'd supported Celeste seemed cowed by the display of divine power they'd just witnessed. "I thought so." Damon turned to Sarah, his hand still holding hers, and his voice softened. "I told you I'd make this right. I told you I'd protect them." "You almost died," Sarah said, but she was smiling through her tears. "Worth it." He pulled her closer. "You're worth everything." A small sound interrupted them. Luna, having escaped Tobias's hold, was toddling across the floor toward them. She reached Damon's legs and raised her arms imperiously. "Papa." "Up." Damon laughed and scooped her up, settling her on his hip. Luna immediately grabbed Sarah's hand, creating a chain between all three of them. "Family," the tiny pup declared with absolute certainty. And looking around the throne room. At the assembled nobles finally, grudgingly showing respect, at the 10 orphaned pups who were finding home in the palace, at Damon holding Luna while he held Sarah's hand, Sarah thought that maybe, finally, they were family, she agreed, squeezing Damon's hand. The court erupted in applause. And for the first time in 5 years, Sarah felt like she could breathe. Chapter 7. The letters started appearing the morning after Celeste's banishment. Sarah found the first one slipped under her door, written in Damon's precise handwriting on heavy cream paper that smelled faintly of pine and mountain air. She almost threw it away unread. Almost. Instead, she tucked it into her pocket and went about her day, feeding the pups, overseeing their lessons, pretending her heart wasn't hammering every time she thought about the folded paper against her hip. That night, after the pups were asleep, she finally opened it. Sarah. I don't expect you to forgive me. I'm not sure I'd forgive me if our positions were reversed. But I need you to know that I remember now, not everything, but enough. I remember the night we met, how you'd climbed the apple tree in the Silver Creek Pack lands because you wanted to see the sunset from higher up. I remember catching you when you slipped, how you laughed instead of being embarrassed, how that laugh made my wolf sit up and take notice for the first time in my life. I remember our third date, when you made me try that terrible fermented fish your grandmother used to make, and I pretended to like it because the joy on your face was worth the taste. I remember you figuring out I was lying and laughing so hard you couldn't breathe, and how I fell in love with you right then, in that moment of pure, honest happiness. I remember proposing under the full moon, how you cried and said yes before I even finished asking. How you told me you'd been waiting your whole life for me, and I promised I'd spend my whole life being worth that wait. I broke that promise. I broke you. I broke us. But I remember. And I'm hoping that counts for something. Yours, even if you're not mine anymore. Damon. Sarah read it 3 times before the tears came. She cried into her pillow so the pups wouldn't hear, her body shaking with 5 years of grief finally finding release. The next morning, there was another letter. Then another. Then another. Every day, a new letter slipped under her door. Some were long, detailing memories she'd thought lost forever, their first kiss, their first fight, the time she'd convinced him to sneak away from royal duties to go swimming in the creek. Others were short, just a few lines. I saw Luna playing with her reflection in the fountain today. She has your smile. Or, Marcus, the pup, not the dead traitor, helped the kitchen staff make bread this morning. He kneaded the dough with such serious concentration. You'd have been proud. Or simply, I miss you. I miss us. I miss who we were before I destroyed everything. Sarah read them all. Kept them in a drawer in her desk, tied with a ribbon she'd found in the market. She didn't respond, couldn't bring herself to, but she read every word like they were sacred texts. And she watched. Watched Damon spending hours with the pups in the palace gardens, teaching them to shift for the first time. The transformations were clumsy, tiny wolves with oversized paws and disproportionate ears, but Damon was patient, encouraging, celebrating every small success. Watched him sitting in the library with the twins, reading them stories about brave wolves and distant adventures, his deep voice gentle and animated. Watched him carrying an exhausted Marcus back from the kitchens, the pup fast asleep against his shoulder, flowers still dusting his hair. Watched him with Luna. Always Luna, his shadow, his moonbeam. The tiny silver pup had claimed him completely, refused to sleep unless he came to say goodnight, cried when he had to leave for council meetings. Papa's got to work, little one, he'd say, kneeling to her level. But I'll be back before dinner. Promise. Promise? Luna would ask, her small hand gripping his finger. Promise. And he always kept it. No matter what meeting ran long, what crisis demanded attention, Damon was always back before dinner to scoop Luna into his arms and ask about her day. Sarah watched it all from doorways and windows, her heart cracking and healing and cracking again with every interaction. This was the male she'd fallen in love with. This was the mate she'd mourned. Not the cold, ruthless king that grief and manipulation had created, but the man underneath, kind, patient, devoted. He was coming back to her. Coming back to himself. And she didn't know if that made everything better or infinitely worse. The storm hit on the 15th night. Sarah woke to thunder that shook the palace foundations and lightning that turned night into day. Rain lashed against the windows like angry fists. The wind howled through the corridors, making the old stone structure groan. And from the pup's sleeping chamber, she heard screaming. She ran, her feet barely touching the floor. The pups were huddled together in the center of the room, all 10 of them piled in a terrified mass. The younger ones were crying. The older ones were trying to be brave but failing, their small bodies trembling with each crash of thunder. "It's okay," Sarah soothed, gathering as many as she could into her arms. "It's just a storm. You're safe. I've got you." But there were too many, and they were too frightened. Marcus was having a panic attack, his breathing coming in short, sharp gasps. The twins had shifted partially in their fear, caught between forms. And Luna was screaming for Damon, her small voice raw with terror. "Papa. Want Papa. Papa." "Luna, sweetheart, Sarah started, but the door burst open. Damon stood there, soaking wet, his hair plastered to his head. He must have run through the rain from his quarters in the main palace. "I heard her," he said simply, his eyes finding Luna immediately. "I heard her calling." Luna launched herself from Sarah's arms before she could stop her, running across the room on unsteady toddler legs. Damon caught her, pulled her against his chest, and she immediately quieted, burrowing into him like he was the only safe place in the world. "Papa's here," he murmured into her hair. "I've got you, Moonbeam. You're safe." Another crack of thunder made the other pups whimper. Sarah tried to comfort them, but Marcus's panic attack was getting worse, and the twins were starting to shift fully, which would be dangerous in such a small space. "Help me," she found herself saying. "Please." "I can't, there are too many." Damon was already moving. He kept Luna secured against his shoulder with one arm while reaching for Marcus with the other. "Hey, brave wolf. Look at me. Look right here." Marcus's wild eyes found Damon's calm ones. "Good. Now breathe with me. In." Damon took an exaggerated breath. "Out," he exhaled slowly. "In. Out. That's it. You've got it." While Damon worked with Marcus, Sarah focused on the twins, helping them control their partial shift, murmuring reassurances that this storm wasn't like the fires, wasn't like the attacks, wasn't anything but weather. They worked in tandem, moving between pups, offering comfort and stability. When the thunder crashed, they'd both react immediately. Damon's steady presence grounding the ones who needed strength, Sarah's gentle touch soothing the ones who needed softness. And then, without planning it, without discussing it, Sarah began to sing. It was one of the Silver Creek lullabies, one her mother had sung to her during storms. The words were in the old tongue, speaking of safe dens and protective wolves and the promise of dawn after darkness. Damon's voice joined hers on the second verse. His harmony was rough. He'd never been a natural singer, but it blended with hers in a way that was achingly familiar. They'd done this before, years ago, singing together just for the joy of it. The pups gradually settled. Marcus's breathing evened out. The twins shifted back to human form and curled up together. One by one, the other pups found spots close to either Sarah or Damon, their small bodies finally relaxing. But Luna stayed where she was, one hand fisted in Damon's shirt, the other reaching out to grab Sarah's sleeve. "Both," she mumbled, her eyes already drooping. "Need both." So they sat together on the floor, backs against the wall, Luna sprawled across both their laps, the other pups arranged around them in a protective circle. The storm raged outside, but in their small bubble, there was peace. "Thank you," Sarah said quietly, once all the pups were asleep. "For coming. For helping. Always." Damon's hand rested on Luna's back, his thumb making small circles. "I'll always come when they need me. When you need me. I know." And she did. That was the problem, she knew he would. Knew he'd keep every promise he made from now on. Knew he'd die before he failed them again. But knowing didn't erase 5 years of pain. Didn't heal the wounds that had gone bone deep. "I'm terrified," she heard herself confess. The words came out broken, barely audible over the rain. "I'm so terrified of trusting you again. Of letting myself believe this is real, that you won't," her voice cracked. "That you won't break me again. Because Damon, I don't think I'd survive it. The first time nearly killed me. If it happens again." "It won't." He shifted carefully, keeping Luna secure while freeing one arm to reach for Sarah. "I swear on my life, on the mate bond, on everything I am, I will spend eternity earning your forgiveness. I will spend every day proving that I'm worthy of your trust. And if I fail, if I ever hurt you again, then I don't deserve to draw a breath." "You can't promise that. You can't know." "I can promise that I'll try. Every day, with everything I have, I'll try." His hand found hers, fingers intertwining. "You and these pups, you're my world now. Not the crown, not the kingdom, not politics or power. Just you. Just them. Just this." Sarah wanted to argue, wanted to maintain her walls, her distance, her protection. But she was so tired. Tired of being strong. Tired of being alone. Tired of pretending her heart wasn't reaching for him every time he was near. "I can't promise I'll forgive you," she whispered. "I can't promise this will work. I'm not asking for promises." Damon's thumb traced patterns on her hand. "I'm just asking for a chance. For time. For the possibility that maybe, someday, we can rebuild what was broken." The storm outside was lessening, the thunder growing distant. Rain still fell, but gentler now, more rhythm than rage. "I read your letters," Sarah admitted. "Every single one. I keep them in my desk drawer." She felt him tense beside her, surprise and hope flooding through the bond she'd been keeping carefully controlled. "I remember too," she continued. "I remember all of it, the good parts, before everything fell apart. I remember falling in love with you. Remember thinking I'd found my forever." She looked down at Luna, sleeping peacefully across their laps. "I want to believe we can have that again. I want to believe this." She gestured at the sleeping pups, at them sitting together, at the fragile peace between them. "Is real and lasting." "It is," Damon said fiercely. "I'll make it real. I'll make it last. You can't control everything. You can't promise. Then I'll promise what I can control. I promise to choose you, every day. I promise to fight for us, for them, for the family we're building. I promise to be honest, even when it's hard. To communicate, even when I want to retreat. To trust you, to respect you, to love you with everything I am." He turned to look at her, his eyes bright in the darkness. "Those promises, I can keep. Those promises, I will keep." Sarah stared at him, at the mate she'd loved and lost and found again, and felt something inside her finally give way. Not forgiveness. That would take time, maybe years. Not absolution, he'd still have to earn that through actions, not words. But acceptance. Of the possibility that they might survive this. That the broken pieces of what they'd been could be reformed into something new, something stronger for having been shattered and rebuilt. "I'm still angry," she said. "At you, at the situation, at everything we lost. I know. And I'm still scared. Probably always will be, at least a little. I know. And the pups come first. Always. If you ever put politics or the crown above their safety. I won't." His voice was absolute. "Never again." Sarah took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "Then, stay. Tonight. Just, stay. Hold me. Let me remember what it feels like to not be alone." Damon went very still. "Sarah." I'm not promising anything beyond tonight. I'm not saying everything is fixed. She looked away, embarrassed by her own vulnerability. I just need to not be alone right now. Okay. The word was gentle, careful, like he was afraid she'd spook. Okay. I'll stay. They maneuvered carefully, shifting positions without waking the pups. Eventually they were lying down, Luna still sprawled across both of them, the other pups arranged in a protective circle. Damon's arm came around Sarah's shoulders, pulling her against his chest. She stiffened at first, every instinct screaming at her to maintain distance, to protect herself. But then she felt his heartbeat, steady and strong and real. Felt the mate bond humming between them, no longer blocked or suppressed. Felt his breath in her hair and his warmth seeping into her bones. And she let herself relax. Let herself remember what it felt like to be held by her mate. To be safe. To be home. I've got you, Damon whispered, his lips brushing her temple. I've got you, and I'm never letting go again. Sarah didn't respond. Couldn't, past the lump in her throat. But she curled into him, let his arms tighten around her, and for the first time in 5 years, she fell asleep feeling something other than alone. Damon held her like she was made of glass and starlight, like she was the most precious thing in existence, and he didn't sleep at all. Just watched her breathe, counted her heartbeats, and silently thanked the moon goddess for this second chance. Dawn came too soon, painted in shades of pink and gold. Sarah woke slowly, disoriented by the warmth surrounding her, by the arms holding her secure, by the absence of the constant vigilance she'd maintained for years. Then memory crashed back. The storm. The pups. Damon. She'd fallen asleep in his arms. She should move. Should re-establish distance, remember why she'd been keeping him at arm's length. But Luna was still sprawled across both of them, and the other pups were beginning to stir, and for just a moment, Sarah let herself pretend. Pretended this was normal. Pretended they were a family, a real family, not just survivors clinging together. Pretended everything was going to be okay. Good morning, Damon murmured, his voice rough with sleeplessness. You didn't sleep, Sarah said, hearing it in his voice. Couldn't. Was too busy watching you, making sure this wasn't a dream. She should say something sarcastic, something to deflect the intimacy. But she found she didn't want to. It's not a dream, she said instead. We're here. This is real. Yeah. His arms tightened fractionally. We are. A knock at the door interrupted the moment. Tobias's voice came through, urgent and strained. Alpha King? Luna? I'm sorry to disturb, but there's a situation. A messenger arrived from the border territories. It's urgent. Damon carefully extracted himself from the pile of sleeping pups, helping Sarah up as well. Luna whimpered at the movement but didn't wake, immediately curling into the warm spot Damon had left behind. They found Tobias in the corridor, his face grave. What is it? Damon asked. Rogue factions are rising across the kingdom. Multiple territories reporting organized attacks, not random violence. And they're united under a single leader. Tobias handed over a tablet showing reports from various pack scouts. He's calling himself the Silver Shepherd, and he's claiming that the Luna and the pups are the rightful rulers. That you've been holding them captive, that he's here to free them. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. No. That's not possible. What? Damon looked at her, catching something in her expression. Sarah, what is it? The Silver Shepherd. Her voice came out hollow. That was my father's title. He was the Alpha of Silver Creek before. She stopped, her mind racing. Before I watched him die in the massacre. One of your soldiers, or the soldiers wearing your seal, shot him. I watched him fall. I held his hand while he bled out. Are you certain he died? Tobias asked carefully. Sarah tried to remember, but it was all chaos and blood and screaming. I thought so. He wasn't breathing. There was so much blood. And then the soldiers were coming closer, and I had to run, had to grab the pups and run, and I assumed. If he survived, Damon said slowly, if he's been building an army for 5 years, gathering rogue wolves loyal to Silver Creek. Then he's coming for revenge, Sarah finished. Against you. Against the kingdom. Against everyone he thinks is responsible for destroying his pack. And he's using you as justification, Tobias added. The reports say he's been telling wolves that you're being held prisoner, that the pups are being used as hostages, that he's leading a liberation force. That's insane. Sarah's hands clenched into fists. I'm not a prisoner. The pups are safe here. If he actually cared about us, he'd have made contact, would have. She stopped, a horrible realization dawning. The assassin. The one who tried to poison the pups. What if that wasn't from Celeste's faction? What if it was from my father? Why would your father try to kill the pups he's supposedly trying to protect? Damon asked. To force my hand. To make me leave the palace, run for safety, right into his arms. Sarah's mind was racing now, pieces falling into place with terrible clarity. He always was a strategic thinker. Always believed the ends justified the means. If he thought sacrificing a few orphans would help him achieve his goal of destroying you and reclaiming power, then he's more dangerous than any external threat we've faced, Damon finished grimly. Because he has legitimate claim to your loyalty. He's your father. Was my father, Sarah corrected, her voice hard. The male who led Silver Creek with honor and compassion died in that massacre. If he survived, if he's been orchestrating this, she looked at Damon, then at Tobias. Then he's no longer the father I knew. He's just another wolf trying to use me and those children for power. What do we do? Tobias asked, looking between them. Sarah straightened her shoulders, and Damon saw the Luna in her, the true Luna, silver-blessed and fierce. We protect the pups. We protect the kingdom. And we stop him, whoever he is now. Whatever he's become. Together, Damon added, taking her hand. Sarah looked at their joined hands, then up at his face. For a long moment, she didn't speak. Then she squeezed his fingers, just once. Together, she agreed. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. But it was partnership. It was unity. It was two broken wolves choosing to stand together against the storm. And for now, that would have to be enough. Behind them, through the door, Luna's sleepy voice called out, Papa? Mama? Where go? Sarah's breath caught. Mama. Luna had never called her that before. Always Sarah, or just babbled syllables. But now, Mama. She looked at Damon and saw the same emotion reflected in his eyes, joy and terror and desperate hope all tangled together. We're here, Moonbeam, Damon called back. We're right here. Coming back? Always, Sarah answered, her voice steady despite the tears threatening. We're always coming back. Because that was the promise they could make. Not that they'd never face danger, never encounter threats, never have to fight. But that they'd always come back. Always fight their way home. Always choose each other and those pups, no matter what storms, literal or metaphorical, tried to tear them apart. Always, Damon echoed, his hands still holding hers. And outside, in the distance, storm clouds gathered on the horizon. The silver shepherd was coming. But this time, Sarah wouldn't face him alone. This time, she had a mate at her side, 10 pups to protect, and a kingdom worth fighting for. This time, she had something worth standing her ground for. And she'd be damned if she'd let anyone, even her own father, take it away. Chapter 8. The attack came 3 days later, at dawn, when the palace guard was changing shifts and the city was just beginning to wake. Sarah heard it first, not the sounds of battle, but the silence that came before. The birds stopped singing. The usual morning noises of the city faded. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Then the howls began. Hundreds of them, rising from the forest that bordered the palace grounds. A war cry that made her blood run cold and her wolf surged to the surface with desperate urgency. "Get the pups to the safe room," Damon commanded, already moving toward the window where smoke was beginning to rise from the outer walls. "Now, Sarah." But Sarah was already gathering children, counting heads. 1, 2, 3, all the way to 10. Luna clung to her neck, the other pups pressing close, their small faces frightened but trusting. "Tobias." Damon called, and his beta appeared in the doorway, already armed and armored. "Take them." The reinforced chamber beneath the throne room. Full guard detail. "No one gets through that door except Sarah or me." "Yes, Alpha King." Tobias reached for Luna, but the pup whimpered and burrowed deeper into Sarah's embrace. "Luna, sweetheart, you have to go with Tobias." Sarah's voice was steady despite the terror clawing at her chest. "Mama needs to help Papa keep everyone safe." "No." Luna's small hands fisted in Sarah's shirt. "Stay with you. Stay with Mama and Papa." "You will, Moonbeam." "I promise." Sarah kissed her forehead, breathing in her scent, milk and honey and safety. "But right now, you need to be brave and help Tobias protect your brothers and sisters. Can you do that?" Luna's lower lip trembled, but she nodded. Slowly, she loosened her grip and let Tobias take her. The other pups followed, Marcus helping to herd the younger ones, the twins holding hands for courage. As they disappeared down the corridor, Sarah felt something tear inside her chest. If this went wrong, if the attack succeeded. "They'll be safe," Damon said, reading her thoughts through the bond. "Tobias will die before he lets anyone near them." "I know." Sarah turned to face him, and for a moment, they just looked at each other. 5 years of pain and loss and desperate survival, all leading to this moment. "Damon, if something happens." "It won't." "But if it does," she crossed to him, placed her hand over his heart. "The pups. Promise me you'll protect them. All of them. No matter what." "I promise." His hand covered hers. "But Sarah, nothing is going to happen to you." "I won't allow it. You can't control everything." She stood on her toes, pressed a quick, fierce kiss to his lips. "But thank you for trying." Another explosion rocked the palace. Closer this time. There through the outer wall, came a guard's shout from the corridor. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. Damon shifted partially, claws extending, eyes blazing gold. "Then let's go remind them why you don't attack an alpha king in his own home." Sarah shifted too, feeling her silver wolf surge forward with power that still surprised her. Since the trial of fire, since the moon goddess's blessing, her wolf had been stronger than ever. Faster, fiercer, touched by something divine. She was going to need every bit of that strength today. They ran together through the palace corridors, gathering their forces. The royal guard fell into formation around them, elite warriors who'd sworn oaths to protect the throne with their lives. Dr. Winters appeared with a medical team, already setting up triage stations for the wounded. Palace staff who could fight grabbed weapons. Those who couldn't shepherded civilians to safe rooms deep in the mountain. By the time they reached the palace's main courtyard, the battle had spilled over the inner walls. Rogue wolves poured through breaches, their eyes wild with fanaticism and rage. They weren't fighting with the calculated precision of trained soldiers, they were fighting like wolves with nothing left to lose. Desperate. Dangerous. "Hold the line." Damon commanded, his alpha voice carrying across the chaos. "Protect the palace. Protect your Luna." The royal guard surged forward, meeting the rogue assault with brutal efficiency. Steel met claw, fangs tore flesh, and the courtyard stones ran red with blood from both sides. Sarah fought beside Damon, her silver wolf a blur of motion. She'd spent 5 years running, hiding, protecting the pups through stealth and desperation. But she'd also spent 5 years surviving, and survival had taught her how to fight when cornered. She was magnificent. Damon watched her move, graceful and deadly, every motion precise, her silver fur gleaming in the dawn light like a beacon. Rogues fell before her, and those who didn't fall retreated, some instinct recognizing the divine blessing she carried. For a moment, it seemed like they might win. The initial assault was faltering. The royal guard was holding. The rogues were starting to scatter. Then the war drums began. A sound like thunder rolled across the battlefield, and the rogue forces parted. Through the gap came a wolf that made Sarah's heart stop. He was massive, easily twice the size of a normal alpha, his fur silver gray with age but his body still powerful. Scars crisscrossed his muzzle and flanks, evidence of decades of battle survived. And his eyes were the same green as Sarah's own. Alpha Gregor of Silver Creek. The Silver Shepherd. Her father. He shifted to human form in the center of the courtyard, and Sarah found herself shifting too, unable to stop the instinctive response to a parent's presence. Sarah, no, Damon started, but she was already moving forward. Papa? Her voice came out small, childlike. She thought she'd buried that little girl who'd called him Papa, who'd sat on his knee while he told stories, who'd believed he could protect her from anything. Sarah. Gregor's voice was rough with emotion and madness. My little moon. I've come to take you home. I am home. She forced strength into her voice. Papa, this is my home. These wolves, this palace, Damon, this is where I belong. No. Gregor shook his head, and she could see it now, the fractures in his sanity, the way grief and rage had broken something fundamental inside him. They took you from me. They destroyed our pack. They murdered our family. I've spent 5 years building an army to save you, to avenge what was stolen from us. Papa, listen to me. Sarah took a step closer, hands raised in supplication. I'm not a prisoner. I'm the Luna. I chose to come back. I chose Damon. He's my mate, my true mate, blessed by the moon goddess herself. Lies. Gregor's roar echoed across the courtyard. The Alpha King poisoned your mind, just like he poisoned his kingdom. But I'll save you, little moon. I'll kill the tyrant and restore the old ways, and you'll understand that everything I've done was for you. Everything you've done? Sarah felt anger beginning to burn through her shock. You've been waging war across the kingdom. Innocent wolves have died following you. Did you do that for me? Casualties of war. Acceptable losses to achieve our goal. Acceptable losses? Sarah's voice rose. Papa, you sound just like them. Just like the counselors who orchestrated the Silver Creek massacre. You become the thing you're supposed to hate. I've become what's necessary. Gregor's control was slipping, his wolf flickering beneath his skin. When I woke up in that mass grave, when I clawed my way out past the bodies of my pack, of your mother, Sarah, of your brothers, I swore I would have vengeance. I swore I would make the Alpha King pay for every life he stole. He didn't know. Sarah screamed, and the courtyard went silent. Damon didn't order the massacre. He was drugged, manipulated, his orders forged. The counselor responsible is dead. The conspirators have been executed. Justice has been served. Justice? Gregor laughed, bitter and broken. There's no justice for what was done to us. There's only revenge. He shifted again, and this time his wolf was wrong, too large, too twisted, touched by the same madness that had consumed his human mind. Then I'm sorry, Papa. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face as she shifted too, her silver wolf emerging to face the father who'd raised her. Because I can't let you destroy what we've built. I can't let you hurt these people, this kingdom, the pups who depend on me. The pups? Gregor's massive head tilted. The orphans you've collected? They're not your children, Sarah. They're just reminders of your failure to save their parents. The words were designed to cut, and they did. But Sarah had spent too long letting guilt define her. They're my children now, she said firmly. Mine and Damon's. We're raising them together, giving them the home and safety they deserve. And I will defend them from anyone who threatens that, even you. So be it. Gregor's wolf crouched, preparing to strike. I'll kill the Alpha King, and when you're freed from his influence, you'll understand. You'll thank me. He lunged, not at Sarah, but past her, toward where Damon stood with the royal guard. Sarah moved on instinct, her silver wolf intercepting her father mid-leap. They collided with bone-jarring force, rolling across the blood-slicked stones. Gregor was larger, stronger, driven by years of rage. But Sarah was blessed by the moon goddess herself. They fought with the desperate savagery of family turned enemy. Gregor's claws opened wounds on her flanks, her fangs tore at his throat. They crashed through debris, destroyed benches and planters, painted the courtyard red with their blood. Around them, the battle raged on. The royal guard fought Gregor's army. Damon led charges against clusters of rogues. But the heart of the conflict was here, between father and daughter, between past and future. Stop this. Sarah managed to pin him momentarily, her jaws at his throat. Papa, please. The father I loved wouldn't do this. Wouldn't force his daughter to choose between him and her mate. Wouldn't slaughter innocents for revenge. For a moment, she saw recognition in his eyes. Saw the father she remembered, the one who taught her to hunt and sing and lead with compassion. Then the madness crashed back over him like a wave. That father died with your mother, Gregor snarled. I'm all that's left. He threw her off with impossible strength, sending her crashing into the palace wall. Before she could recover, he was charging again, but not at her. At Damon. No. Sarah's scream was both wolf and woman, anguish and denial and desperate fear. Damon shifted to meet the attack, but Gregor was insane and that made him unpredictable. His claws raked across Damon's chest, opening deep wounds. His fangs sought Damon's throat. The mate bond blazed with pain, and Sarah felt every wound her father inflicted on her mate like they were her own. She had to choose. Her father, mad and broken, but still the wolf who'd raised her, who'd sung her lullabies and dried her tears and sworn to always protect her. Or her mate. Her true mate, her chosen partner, the father her pups called Papa. It wasn't really a choice at all. Sarah's silver wolf moved faster than thought, faster than grief. She hit her father from the side, driving him away from Damon. This time, when they collided, she didn't hesitate. Her fangs found his throat. Not to wound. Not to warn. To end. Gregor went still, his massive body going limp in her jaws. She held him there for a moment, feeling his heartbeat slow, feeling the life drain from the wolf who'd given her life. Then she shifted back to human form, cradling her father's head in her lap as he made the same transformation, his body returning to the shape she remembered from childhood. Papa, she whispered, tears falling freely now. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sarah. His voice was weak, fading, but clear. The madness had left his eyes, replaced by something that looked almost like peace. My little moon. When did you grow up? A long time ago, Papa. When you weren't there to see it. I'm sorry. Blood bubbled at the corner of his mouth. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you. Sorry I let grief make me into something you had to stop. Your mother, she would have been so ashamed. No. Sarah pressed her hand to his cheek. She would have understood. She would have forgiven you. But you can't. It wasn't a question. I already have. And saying it, Sarah realized it was true. She'd forgiven him the moment she'd made the choice to end his suffering. You were a good father once. I'm choosing to remember that wolf, not the one grief and rage created. Gregor's hand came up, trembling, to touch her face. "You're so strong. So much stronger than I ever was. The kingdom, they're lucky to have you. Papa. The pups. The ones you're protecting." His eyes were starting to glaze. "Your mother and I, we always wanted you to have children. Wanted to see you happy. Are they good children?" "The best." Sarah's voice broke. "They're brave and kind and beautiful. You would have loved them. Tell them," he coughed, blood staining his lips. "Tell them their grandmother would have spoiled them rotten. Would have baked those honey cakes you loved." "I will. I promise." "And Sarah?" His grip on her face tightened with the last of his strength. "Be happy. Please. Don't let grief and duty be all you know. Be happy for both of us." Then his hand fell away, his eyes went distant, and Alpha Gregor of Silver Creek breathed his last in his daughter's arms. Sarah held him as she'd held her mother 5 years ago, as she'd held so many dying wolves. But this time, the grief was different. It was an ending, yes, but also a release. Her father had been dead since the massacre. The creature that had lived on was just his ghost, haunting the kingdom with rage. Now he could finally rest. Around them, the battle was ending. Without their leader, the rogue forces were surrendering, throwing down weapons, shifting back to human form. The war was over almost as soon as it had begun. Damon limped over, his wounds already healing, and knelt beside Sarah. He didn't say anything, just put his arms around her and her father's body, holding them both while she shattered. "I killed him," Sarah sobbed into Damon's chest. "I killed my own father." "You gave him mercy," Damon corrected gently. "You freed him from the madness that was consuming him." "That's not murder, Sarah. That's love." "It doesn't feel like love." "I know." He kissed her hair, her tears, her trembling hands. "But it was. And someday, you'll believe that." Tobias appeared with healers and guards to handle the aftermath. The rogue forces were being disarmed and organized. The wounded were being treated. The dead, and there were so many dead, were being counted and prepared for proper burial. "The pups?" Sarah asked, her voice raw. "Safe. All of them. Luna's been asking for you." Tobias's expression softened. "They all have. Take me to them." Sarah tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't support her. "Please. I need to see them. Need to know they're okay." Damon lifted her easily, cradling her against his chest despite his own injuries. "I've got you," he murmured. "Always." They made their way through the damaged palace to the safe room beneath the throne chamber. The door was still sealed, for guards standing watch with weapons drawn. "Open it," Damon commanded. The door swung wide, and 10 small bodies came pouring out. Luna reached them first, launching herself from Tobias's arms into Sarah's. "Mama. Mama okay? Papa hurt?" "We're okay, Moonbeam." Sarah clutched her close, breathing in her scent. "We're all okay." The other pups swarmed them, checking for injuries, demanding reassurance, needing the physical confirmation that their parents had returned as promised. "You came back," Marcus said, his voice thick with relief. "You promised you'd come back, and you did." "Always," Damon said, carefully lowering himself to the floor so the pups could swarm him properly. "We'll always come back to you." They stayed like that for a long time. 2 battered adults and 10 frightened children, holding each other in the darkness, taking comfort in the simple fact of survival. Eventually, the pups calmed enough to be coaxed back to their quarters. Dr. Winters examined Sarah and Damon, treating their wounds, declaring them both lucky to be alive. The kingdom began the long process of counting casualties and negotiating terms with the surrendered rogues. Some would be tried for crimes committed during the assault. Others, those who'd been misled, who'd followed Gregor believing they were fighting for justice, would be offered amnesty and rehabilitation. But all of that was for later. For tomorrow, and the day after, and all the days that would follow. Tonight, Sarah and Damon stood in the palace's private chapel, with only Tobias and the 10 pups as witnesses. Elder Miriam performed the ceremony, the ancient words that would complete their mate bond, that would make Sarah not just Damon's mate but his Luna in truth, bound by more than fate or divine blessing. Bound by choice. Do you, Damon Blackthorn, Alpha King of the Mountain Territories, take Sarah of Silver Creek as your true mate, your Luna, your partner in all things? Elder Miriam intoned. I do. Damon's voice was steady, his eyes never leaving Sarah's face. From this day until my last day, from this breath until my final breath, I choose her. Always her. And do you, Sarah of Silver Creek, take Damon Blackthorn as your true mate, your alpha, your partner in all things? Sarah looked at the male before her. Saw the scars they both carried, physical and emotional, visible and hidden. Saw the 10 pups watching them with hope and trust in their eyes. Saw the future they could build together if they were brave enough to try. I do, she said, and felt the rightness of it settle into her bones. From this day until my last day, from this breath until my final breath, I choose him. Choose us. Choose this family. The mate bond, already strong, exploded with power. It felt like being struck by lightning. Painful and exhilarating and transformative all at once. The connection between them went from thread to cable, from whisper to symphony. They were one now. Truly, completely, irrevocably one. Elder Miriam smiled. Then by the power vested in me by the moon goddess herself, I declare you mated and bound. What fate has joined, let none separate. Luna Queen, Tobias said formally, dropping to one knee. Alpha King. Damon pulled Sarah close, kissed her with 5 years of longing and loss and desperate love, and felt her kiss him back with the same intensity. When they finally broke apart, Luna was tugging on Sarah's dress. Mama? Papa? What happened? Sarah knelt, pulling the tiny pup into her arms. The other 9 crowded close, needing reassurance, needing to understand. We got married, Moonbeam, Damon explained, joining them on the floor. Mama and Papa are officially a family now. We family already, Luna said matter-of-factly. You, Mama, Papa, all of us. Family. You're right, Sarah said, tears threatening again, but happy tears this time. We've been a family all along. But now it's official. Legal. Nobody can ever say you don't belong with us. We staying? Marcus asked, his voice small and uncertain. Forever staying? Forever staying, Damon confirmed. You're Blackthorns now. All of you. That's your name, your real name. Marcus Blackthorn, Luna Blackthorn, Ash and Ember Blackthorn. He went through all 10 names, making it real, making it permanent. The pup's eyes went wide. A surname meant belonging. Meant family. Meant home. Blackthorn, Luna repeated, testing it out. Then louder, Luna Blackthorn. She looked at Sarah and Damon with pure joy. I'm Luna Blackthorn, and you're my mama and papa. That's right, Moonbeam, Sarah said through her tears. That's exactly right. 3 months later, Sarah stood in the palace gardens, watching the 10 pups play. They'd grown in the short time since the battle. Not just physically, though they'd all filled out with regular meals and safety. But emotionally too. The fear had left their eyes, replaced by the natural exuberance of healthy children. Marcus was teaching the younger ones how to shift properly. The twins were climbing trees with reckless abandon. Luna was showing a group of palace children her special, silver fur, completely unaware that it marked her as blessed by the moon goddess. They were happy. Thriving. Home. We made it, Damon said, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. Against all odds, through everything, we actually made it. We did. Sarah leaned back against him, watching Luna try to coax a butterfly onto her nose. I keep waiting for something to go wrong. For this to be too good to be true. It's not too good. It's exactly what we fought for. What you fought for, all those years you were running. Damon's chin rested on her shoulder. You kept them alive, kept them safe, brought them home. This is your victory, Sarah. Ours, she corrected. We did this together. Together, he agreed. Luna spotted them and came running, her small legs pumping, her silver hair flying behind her like a banner. Mama. Papa. Watch this. She shifted mid-run. Still clumsy, still learning, but successful. Her tiny silver wolf bounded up to them, yipping with pride. That's amazing, Moonbeam. Sarah knelt, letting Luna shift back and climb into her lap. You're getting so good at that. Papa taught me, Luna said proudly. Papa says I'm the best shifter in the whole kingdom. You absolutely are, Damon confirmed solemnly, though his eyes met Sarah's with amusement. A natural talent. The other pups were calling Luna back to their games. She squirmed down from Sarah's lap, kissed both her parents' cheeks, and ran off to join her siblings. Our children, Sarah said softly, watching them play. When did that happen? When did they stop being orphans I was protecting and start being our children? I think it happened the moment you risked everything to save them, Damon said. Or maybe the moment I held Luna while she slept. Or maybe it was always supposed to be this way, and we just needed time to see it. The moon goddess works in mysterious ways, Sarah quoted, only half joking. She does. Damon turned her in his arms, tilting her chin up so he could see her face. Do you regret it? Any of it? The pain, the loss, the 5 years of running? Sarah thought about it, really thought about it. Thought about Silver Creek burning, about her father dying in her arms, about all the scars they both carried. No, she said finally. Because all of that brought us here. Brought us to them. She gestured at the playing pups. And I wouldn't trade them for anything. Wouldn't trade this life, this family, for any version of the past. Even a past where the massacre never happened? Where your family lived? Even then. Sarah was surprised to realize she meant it. Because in that past, these 10 pups would have died. Or worse, never been saved at all. And I can't imagine a world without them in it. Me neither. Damon kissed her softly, gently, with all the love they'd fought so hard to reclaim. Thank you. For what? For being strong enough to survive. For bringing them home. For giving me a second chance I probably didn't deserve. For choosing me, choosing us, choosing this life we're building together. Always, Sarah said, and kissed him back. From this day until my last day. I choose you. I choose them. I choose home. They stood there in the garden, wrapped in each other's arms, while 10 children played in the sunshine. The palace was still being rebuilt. The kingdom was still healing from years of corruption and violence. There would be more challenges, more threats, more storms to weather. But they would face them together. As mates. As partners. As a family. Luna's laugh rang out across the garden, pure and joyful and free. Sarah smiled, tucked her head against Damon's chest, and let herself believe in forever. They'd earned it. Every hard-won, battle-scarred, beautiful moment of it. They were home. The end. Thank you for listening to this story. Like, share and subscribe for more.